is this money when they're going to start send maybe between 1,000 and 3,000?
Welcome to the May 9th BCC meeting. If you would silence your phones and stand. We have Pastor Chris Eckert with the Point Washington United Methodist Church for our invocation tonight.
Good afternoon, Council. Let us pray. God our Father, you guide everything in wisdom and love. Accept our prayers for this council. Bless them, bless their homes. Bless this wonderful county and all who live in it. Be with us now as we conduct this business. In your Son's name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes. Call this meeting to order. Are there any additions and deletions?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. We have requests for 2 additions and 2 deletions to the agenda. Under additions, we would request to add under the consent agenda a request to approve and authorize the chairwoman to sign satisfaction of mortgage for a ship mortgage for Agnes Russian. And then under Chairwoman Cecilia Jones, request to add a collaborative and strategic multi-year implementation planning and process management workshop. Those are the 2 additions. Under deletions, we would request to delete item number 19, Rhea Pruner and Matt Allen from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection and their request to temporarily extend the shorebird posting closer to the outfall to incorporate the foraging areas for the snowy plover and the least tern snowbird species. And the second requested deletion is that item number 20, Miss Betty Webb from Riverway South, Apalachicola, Choctawhatchee, and her request was for permission to camp temporarily at Morrison Springs for 2 nights during the week of March 10th through 16th of 2018.
Can I ask a question? Sure. Is that going to come back to us, this Riverway South?
Yes, next week.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I would really, we need some information on this before, like how many people, what's it going to entail, I just say we need some info.
It'll be coming back.
Thank you. All right, motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passed. Okay, we will now have public comments for anything on the agenda. If you feel like you have to leave early, but you want to speak before you have to go, if you're going to be here when your item comes up, please wait. So do we have any public comments at this time? Yes, sir, come on up. State your name, spell your last name, and then tell me what item on the agenda you'll be speaking to.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Bill Haley, H-A-I-L-E-Y, and I'm here about the defoliant which you sprayed in front of our houses that poisons our kids, making them mentally retarded and brain dead, and the investment money on Chad Hawley because no one seems to be doing their job. Chad Hawley is a joke. I'm an engineer, ma'am, sir, and that wasn't done any survey done on that thing. Water doesn't run uphill. It's a bad situation. That's water runs to the north, the drainage is on the south. But that's not the problem. The problem is poisoning the kids with this defoliant. I want to know the name of the defoliant and why you sprayed it without our permission.
We didn't spray it. If you're on Chat Hawley Road, did you get with the South Walton Mosquito Control District?
They said the guy was supposed to talk to the council.
Why? Don't understand why. We have no control over them.
Because they said that you were the ones controlling them. Who controls the mosquito department then, if you don't?
They have a board of directors just like a
Well, who do I speak to talk? Ladies and gentlemen, they have sprayed a poison.
Sir,
They sprayed a poison on our children, which makes them retarded and brain dead. They sprayed this stuff. I watched them spray this. It killed the plants in less than 16 hours. It's worse than Roundup. You're not supposed to use it around our families, around our children. You've killed my animals. You've killed several pets. I want to know the name of the defoliant. If it's not here, where do I go to get this information?
Okay,
Because I didn't give him permission to spray a defoliant around my property anywhere around here that she did. And it wasn't just on Indian Woman, with Chad Harley, Indian Woman, and all around the county.
Okay, I know Ronnie Falk is one of the board members. If you will see me at the break, if you're still here,
Yes,
I will be
ma'am, I'll
happy
be
to
here.
give you his phone number.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, do we have any items to pull from the consent?
Sorry.
Do you want to speak?
Yes, please.
Is it something on the agenda?
It's about everything on the agenda.
You tell me the number on the agenda you want to speak to, say your first name and last name, and spell your last name.
I'm Coy Bowman, B-O-W-M-A-N.
All right, tell me what number you're going to speak to.
Okay, all of them. I'm actually wondering if you all have something you'd like to say to me. Like,
Thank you so much for
I'm sorry.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
sorry for exposing you to dangerous.
Do you want me to say something? You can't interrupt me. Thank you so much for coming. Would you please give your comments to the board now?
Yeah, I'd like to understand why it is that you sunk a dangerous, uninspected Vermeer boring machine into the forest south of my house that made my property shake 24 hours a day for 3 months straight. I did not sleep for 3 months straight. Okay, this was a regional device, which I was told was making a dry hole in the forest to improve the sewer system, was later given all other kinds of excuses. Now, I constantly get answers from this location that when I ask a question, you don't have to explain it to me. You don't have to claim any credit. And so I was told to figure out for myself. And I did, and I found the form that says that regional is actually Walton County doing business as regional. So since the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee has informed me that they have no jurisdiction over Walton County, that it is you, BCC, that are in control of everything, and you are in control of the water department, and it is the water department that sunk this extremely dangerous machine that endangered my health and welfare and maybe the long-term life I thought I might be able to live. And I've been told all kinds of different things, like you plan on developing this entire island, and this is the root cause of the over-traffic on the highways. 30A and Chad Holly are not designed for big truck traffic, yet you still allow 18-wheelers and dump trucks to drive down them. And why is that for commerce? The road is you. When I was a kid, I thought that, my county was just run by some good old boy country folk that love guns and love America. But what I've come to realize is that you're not a county, you're a political entity acquiescing unpaid for federal Indian lands. And I believe that you've been manipulated by St. Joe, who's currently trying to take over the entire state of Florida by sinking important waterways and encroaching on our military bases. And you have been used as a pawn in a game. You thought you were playing cowboys and Indians, and St. Joe is playing germ warfare and global domination. So the federal government has been investigating the political entity of Walton County for over 12 years now because of the illegal development code that you rewrote and has caused all of the turbulence down here in this land that you can't build on because it's not really land. And if you cut down another tree, the whole island is going to sink, and that is why.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Thank you, Ms.
I just wanted to let you know the federal government's going to make this whole island a national preserve, and you will no longer have any political say.
If you'll come back to the podium, ma'am, come back to the
Yes,
podium.
sure.
The issue with regionals, if you'll call Melissa Pilcher.
I've
I'm
already
sure-
spoken to Miss Melissa several times, and she was told that she couldn't do anything about it. Since then, I've done a tremendous amount of research. I have this wonderful map here that is a 200-year-old agreement which you all have broken, and St. Joe will be audited by the IRS.
Thank you very much.
This little piece
Yes,
of
ma'am.
land isn't land. There's no
You may
bedrock.
sit down now. Thank you very much.
There's no bedrock underneath.
You may sit down now. Thank you
the
very
ground.
much. Anyone else have a public comment tonight?
Y'all have a good night.
Any other public comments? Seeing none, do we have anything to pull from the consent agenda? Anything that y'all would like to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, would you make a motion?
Motion to approve.
And a second.
Second.
Motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, any opposed, like sign. Okay, Mr. Sunday.
Waste management.
Oh, yeah, waste management. Mr. Chapman.
Madam Chair, I've filed a necessary conflict of interest form with the clerk, and I will abstain from this vote.
Do we have a motion to approve the waste management EALs?
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
2 seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Now, Stan Sunday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, first item that we have is a request from Amy Stoyles with 3810K. And that request is to close both lanes of a portion of Highway 38, that being from Rosemary Beach to the Water Sound entrance for the 6th annual 3810K on November 23rd from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that being with the approval of the committee comprised of the Sheriff's Office in South Walton Fire District.
Good evening, Amy.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all very much for giving us a few minutes of your time. This is the 6th annual 3810K race. It's a charity race. In the past 5 years, we've raised over $200,000 for local charities. So we hope to continue the success of that event this year. As it says in your information, we're coming before you all today to request that we close a portion of Highway 38 for the event on Thanksgiving Day morning. It's to ensure the safety of our runners. We've had a great event, like I said, for the last 5 years. We're anticipating about 2,500 participants this year and another great event.
I think that was basically the same closure schedule as we've done in the past. We close the little circle around Barrett Square and Rosemary Beach from
5 to 11?
5 to 11, and that's just so we can put up the the banner and all the
finish line
finish
stuff.
line and all that, and take it down. But that still allows traffic to flow through until the road closure.
We're gonna get to see Chris in a cow suit again?
Yes, he might. I'll try. He was the Chick-fil-A cow last year.
Any other questions, comments? I notice you have your information from the Sheriff's Office and the Fire District. That looks in
We've
order,
had the
so-
approvals from everyone, yes.
Great, thank you so much. Do we have a motion and a
I
second?
make a motion. We
Motion?
approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say, any comments from the audience on this issue?
I would like to have their names, they didn't tell me they were.
Okay, would you state your name and spell your last name, please?
Sure, Amy Stoyles, Stoyles.
Craig Baranowski, Baranowski.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next request is regarding our board meetings in the month of June. As you know, you and a lot of the staff will be at the Association of Counties Annual Conference the week of June 26th through the 30th. Our second regularly scheduled board meeting that month is on the 27th. So we would request your direction on how to work around that. Actually, we have the request to move both of the meetings in June up by 1 week, which would move those from June 13th and June 27th to June 6th and June 13th, respectively.
13th or the 20th?
I was thinking 20th.
20th.
20th, I'm sorry, June 20th, June 6th, and June 20th. My apologies.
That works.
Works
Does
for
that work
me.
for everyone?
Yeah, motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second. Any comments from the audience? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a request for direction regarding a request from Congressman Matt Gaetz for the board to adopt a resolution in support of his efforts to enhance the Gulf Test Range. And you have that resolution in your board packet.
Is Colonel Rob Carilla here by any chance? I was expecting an older man. Thank you for coming.
Well, Commissioners, my name is Robert Carilla, K-I-R-I-L-A. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk with y'all here today. I will be very upfront. I just started with Matt last week, but I have read his resolution, and I am familiar with the test range. So if there are any questions that I can expound upon for this board, I'd be happy to do so.
Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
I've read the resolution too, and the Gulf test range is not going to be expanded above the 120,000 square miles. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what would this $30 million do to enhance the test range?
Okay, great. So essentially, what the Gulf Range expansion is going to do is to update all of the sensors and the communication systems associated with those sensors so that we can train our 5th and 6th generation aircraft in the delivery and mission readiness profiles that they need to do as they are developing, in time.
Okay. Well, some documents I read said you're losing about 80 sortie missions in a year because of it. How will that improve where you don't have near as many of these that you can't test?
Right. So these sensors that are being planned are going to allow the flight deconfliction to take place at a higher specificity so that we can make use of that airspace more efficiently. Okay. And just I had a discussion with one of your staffers yesterday. None of this is going to take place in the Gulf. It is going to be along the Panhandle and then down into South Florida.
So no negative impacts at all?
Right, so no negative impacts to tourism nor for the fishermen.
Great, great. Any other questions? Just a minute. Well, let's get any other commissioner questions?
No, I make a motion, we approve this resolution.
Have a motion?
Second.
Motion second. Now, comments from the audience? I heard, all right, you need to come to the podium if you would like to speak. State your name, spell your last name, and then you may ask him the question.
It's Linda Morse, M-O-R-S-E. What do you tell me? We didn't get the paperwork that they did, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, so may I address your...
Address us and she can hear.
Okay, so the Gulf Range is a unique facility in the United States, and it is where we test and train and evaluate our F-35 fighter weapon systems, but also where they test and develop all of the munitions and weapons associated with Eglin Air Force Base, as well as the flight training for the naval aviators out of Pensacola NAS. This does not constitute a change. It is something that we have been doing, the Defense Department has been doing for 50 plus years.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience, questions? We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. And tell Senator Gates, thank you very much.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman, yes, Congressman. Right titles. All right. Next one.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is an update and request for direction regarding the parcel on the north shore of the Choctawhatchee Bay on the west side of 331, currently owned by Miss Tony Stam. Give you a little bit of history. Back on March 28th of this year, board approved for staff to begin negotiations for the purchase of some properties on the North Shore, this being one of those. Asking price of this particular parcel is a 2.14 acre parcel. As you're coming south, you'll see it's the beachfront piece, as I refer to it. It's 2.14 acres. Asking price is currently $1 million. We made a tentative offer to the seller for $700,000. They have countered back with $800,000. They say that number's firm. And if you look back when we first started negotiations on these properties, we did have some appraisals done on the properties. This particular parcel in your packet is identified as parcel number 2, and those appraisals were $600,000 and $435,000. So this asking price is above the appraised value, so we take a 4/5 vote.
Okay. Any questions? Yes, Commissioner Commander.
I do.
Commissioner Difford.
Stan, with you studying this, do we need parcel 3
any of parcel 3 in order to be able to do a turnaround with people with boats because they're going to be slower? Are we going to need to buy any of parcel 3 at a minimum? Is it going to take that?
That would be ideal if we had parcel 3.
Ideal or necessary, because this is above appraised value. So I just...
Okay. Couple things. This particular parcel, standalone, to ingress would require ingressing it from the north and egress to the south and cross the bridge and
I don't think that was our intent.
And come back. Okay. However, with the acquisition of parcels 3, A through D, I believe, would give us access to Bay Grove Road, which does have a cut in the median.
Okay.
We're still negotiating with the seller on those properties.
Without these properties, the egress would, basically, you would have to drive all the way across the bridge to turn around with a boat. So I think these properties are absolutely crucial if we're going to buy this Bay property.
I would agree.
Do we have to buy 2? Can we just buy the parcel 3?
We wouldn't have water access, though. We would have that little canal. We need all of it, really.
And what's the dollar amount we have left on the 331 fund so that we don't get ourselves in a...
$6.1 million.
Okay.
D would give you access to the bay.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, D would.
I'm sorry,
D would. If we got A, B, C, and D, D would give us access to the bay. They could come down Bay Grove Road, turn on to parcel D, and enter the bay that way. I mean, I don't know anything about
Well, shallow right there.
Okay.
Well, my site visit showed that the mouth that leads to this channel that's between 2 and 3A and runs along 3C and 3B is sanded in over the years. There is some docking and also an old ramp that's in there that needs upgrading. The area to the north of that little channel is a oak tree hammock. It's back in there. It's very pretty back in there. Personally, I think we need to try and grab that whole section of land, 3A through D. V2 or number 2 obviously is the beach access that we're looking for. So that's my comment.
Well, should we make a decision on 2 until we know how much they want for 3?
I would venture to say we shouldn't wait too long because either the price is going to tick up or somebody's going to get there ahead of us, and that cuts it out. Yeah.
Couple of logistical issues.
I've been there to the property, and it's a 3 is a beautiful piece of property. You know, it's old Florida at its best, really. You know.
It is a different seller. They gave us a preliminary number a month or so ago of $3 million for all of these properties. We've made a counter offer, and I've yet to hear back from the representative on those properties.
That includes all the way through D?
Yes.
Okay.
And have we had an appraisal? What's the appraisal on that? Do we know yet?
The appraisal collectively on those parcels are $1.8 million and $1.135 million. However, if you look at your map up here, there's a rectangular piece right on the corner of Bay Grove Road and 331. For whatever reason, that did not get included. However, in my research, that parcel is also owned by the same individual. So there's a little bit of confusion as to whether that corner parcel is part of the $3 million offer or not. So I need to get some clarification on that.
How long do you think it'll take to get an answer about 3? Because he'll know he's got us hogtied if we buy 2 without the rest of 3.
I would.
You can still use 2 in the event 3 drops out because you can get access to it off of 331. It's not the most.
Not ideal.
You can't launch a boat there. That's very difficult to do on parcel 2. Unless you come around to the back side, but we'd have to open up that channel so you can even get boat in there.
So 2 is the one where you're driving along 331, you see all the people.
All the people.
Yeah, camping and.
Yeah.
So.
But you can get to it directly off of 331 as you're traveling south.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
You'd have to
yeah.
go all the way across the bridge to if we only got two.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, to launch a
gonna
boat,
be
yeah, you'd have
difficult
to
to
go to
get
Pilcher.
across 2 lanes
Yeah.
of traffic to,
Yeah.
4 lanes of traffic.
But to do what we need to do, there's really no other property left.
I know.
So,
When we had those workshops, I'll tell you, there were a lot of discussion about the need for a boat ramp on the north side of the bay. There was a lot of discussion about a facility for paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, and things of that nature as well.
Could I get a motion and a second, and then we'll open it up to comments?
Commissioners, if your motion is second is to authorize the staff to go forward with the purchase or go forward with negotiating the contract, if you would include in your motion a request to, or an authorization for staff to Public Works to go ahead and do the due diligence that we normally do on parcels, and to go ahead and order a title search so we can go ahead and have that information available to you.
I'll make a motion for discussion. I have another question.
Okay.
I'll second.
And just by way of information, because it is more than the appraisal, it will take the
I
supermajority.
understand it. Do we know or have any estimate in our mind of how much? Okay, so it looks like we possibly might pay $3.8 million for these two pieces. How much do we think it's going to cost to put in a boat ramp and develop it? Have any idea?
Mr. Jones is not here. Last year, he and I met with a group of individuals. They're in the business of looking for property throughout the United States that they can come in there and purchase and develop into a park and maintain it for a 10-year period. Then whenever we started looking, then we did a site visit with that lady here, and they liked it. And then as they started looking at the money and talking with these people, they started ticking it up big time. So it spooked them, they backed out. But the last time I talked to Mr. Jones about it, apparently they are of an interest that if we did purchase it, they would come in and develop it and maintain it for the same 10 years as a county park. So there's a good possibility they may do the development in there at no cost to the county.
But then what do they get out of it? Are they going to charge people for going there?
No, and there's no charge to it. It's just a group of individuals that just love to do this stuff. They have a lot of money and they don't mind putting it on public parks and facilities.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Huh?
Park at my house.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Any comments from the audience? Yes, sir, come on up.
Good afternoon, I'm Brian Kellenberger. Normally I'm the Director of Beach Operations, but today I'm a resident of Walton County. And I live just to the east of the end of the bridge there in a little place called Jolly Bay. And I used to use the former park there to launch my boats on either side of the causeway. So I highly encourage y'all to consider parcel 2. While it'd be nice to have parcels 3 and 4, they're 3A and all that, let's go ahead and get parcel 2 while we're here. I just encourage you as a resident of Walton County to do that. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor, say.
What's the motion again?
Motions, Commissioner
To
Pinellas.
authorize negotiating the contract, authorizing staff to do the due diligence and the title search.
And this particular motion takes the 4-1 vote? Or the
Yes,
4?
it would, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And then when you approve the contract, it will again.
Okay.
Does everybody understand now what we're
Got
voting
it.
on? All right. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Do you want to make clear for the press and the public that this is money from our half-cent sales tax on the bridge? It's not ad valorem tax money, but it's money raised from the half-cent sales tax on the bridge.
And it can only be spent on the bridge.
Only be spent, only be spent in
Only
that
be
area.
spent on the bridge.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is Sugar Estates, Sugar Cove Lane, analysis and recommendation. If you recall, you had a request for some roads in that particular subdivision to be accepted for county maintenance. Staff has met with the gentleman that made this request, And staff recommends acceptance of this roadway for county maintenance with two conditions, contingent upon two conditions. First, that the roadways be brought up to the current county standards, the roadway conditions. And secondly, the implementation of a drainage plan as recommended by a stormwater professional to address the drainage issues associated with the roadway improvement plan. And I believe Mr. Wright is here to answer any specific questions that you may have.
Betty, you want to come up in case we have questions? Does anyone have questions for Betty? Would this need to have a MSBU, or would that just be only one solution?
But that, Mr. Jenkins, I think, would like to speak to that, and he, if y'all want to hear from Mr. Jenkins. What we've done, we went out and we've met with Mr. Jenkins. We provided a cost estimate on what we feel like it'd take to, bring it up to a standard where we would be comfortable with it. And we provided that to him, and I'll let him speak to that, Chairman.
Okay.
But that would be an option, MSBU.
Mr. Jenkins, would you like to come up?
Yes, I would. Hi, my name is Michael Jenkins, Jenkins, and I really appreciate you taking the time to even entertain us for a half a second, especially with all the lofty projects that you have on your plate that you're considering. Now, this subdivision was put in back in 1984, and it followed all of the procedures that were in place to be approved by the county. I have all the documents that actually are in your files that show that it was all accomplished and done according to the approval process that was in place at the time. Unfortunately, somewhere between then and today, it never was picked up by the county to maintain. It is a public road. It was dedicated to the county. Now, I understand that, there is an ordinance in place that because something was dedicated to the county, you do not have to maintain it. My point is that these are just local citizens living on this road. There is no association that can create a funding mechanism to do any improvements. This is a county piece of property. As residents, we are being extremely disadvantaged by the county not taking care of their property. Now, I understand that you do have the protection of an ordinance that says you don't have to do it. But Buddy has gone out, the engineer department, and they've looked at some things over there. And there are some costs that maybe are not completely ridiculous to make some improvements, like the pavement of the road itself. I think he's come up with a figure of $30,000 to improve the road. And you're talking about multi-million-dollar projects. These are just local residents have been here a long time on a county-owned road. But for some reason, somebody didn't push a button, did not bring it before the board 25, 35 years ago. And now here we are forced with a situation that we have no way to do it ourselves. There's no association, we're just individuals. MSBU, I run up the flagpole with some of the neighbors. That's not something they're comfortable with. They feel like it is a county property and they should maintain it. Again, you don't have to, but it would seem like a very, citizen-like thing to accomplish. So that would be my point, that there is, everything was done. A stormwater system was designed and approved by the county. The roads were submitted, the engineering was submitted, everything was approved. It just never got reapproved 3 or 4 years later, but it was never turned down. It just somehow fell between the cracks. Now we have local people, not tourists, God bless them, but just local people who are being, penalized for something that we had no control over. And it seems like a pretty reasonable, not a ridiculous project to take on as a county. So that would be my request, is you consider looking at some of the things that, maybe we should look at some of the locals' concern as opposed to putting in boat ramps, irrigating and landscaping the access roads to our neighborhood or to our South Walton beaches, and think about some of the people who just live here and work here, been here a long time. Those would be my comments on it.
So we're going to take it on as a public works project on top of all of the repairs and then maintain it. We're going to bring the road, where you're going to bring the road to.
No, ma'am, no. We have no, I as a private citizen have no way to pay to have the road brought up to a county standard.
Right. So
as of today. Now, the county standard was met 35 years ago. The county never maintained it. So as a result, now we have a road that's not been paved in 37 years. Of course, it's in disrepair. But it is not the citizens' fault who live there. It was a glitch in the county's system. Unfortunately, that's the way it was done. It was kind of piecemeal back then. As a matter of fact, I even have documents that showed that there were some things that the county enforced in the subdivision. When I built my home there, the county came out and said, oh, you have to put in a stormwater system according to our approved stormwater system. I have a document from the county planning department saying, you have to put the swale in exactly like this. I did. But, it's like you're requesting that I put something in, but then there's nobody to come back and say, oh, wait a second, we might need to maintain this. So it doesn't really make any sense to me how, I understand it's just a confusion. It was just a mishap, and there's a big government agency here that's handling these things. And sometimes T's don't get crossed and I's don't get dotted, and that's what happened. But they're just local people who are being, penalized for it.
I have a question for Buddy. Buddy, is Public Works going to bring the road condition up to the current county standard and then maintain it? Is that what we're going to vote on?
No, that is not our recommendation. Our recommendation is that they find a way to fund that, to bring it up to county standards, and then we would take it over.
Okay.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion one way or the other, and then I'll get comments from the audience? So we can get comments.
I make a motion, we take Buddy's recommendation.
Okay, have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Okay, any other comments from the commissioners? Any comments from the audience?
I've got a comment.
Okay.
Mr. Jenkins, do you know who developer was on this?
Well, according to documentation that's in your files, it was, it was a PTB Enterprises. I'm looking at a document that was signed back in 1986 where, it was submitted to the county for approval. And it was signed off. I got all the county documents that were signed off on. But I'm sure, and Mr. Took is the one who did the engineering on it. But, I'm a developer, have been in the past, and 35 years later, there's not much he's going to do. The county is, the only reasonable way to handle this.
Right. So you're the Michael Jenkins that's
Yes.
on this document. That's
Yes.
January 18th, 2010.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I've been working on this for quite a while. Trying to get some let's just look at this reasonably. Let's not try to pass this on and say, oh, you got to bring it up to a standard that is not going to happen. So what you're really, if you make this, final decision here, basically you're saying, residents here, I don't care. It's not our problem, even though it's county property, even though some things perhaps weren't done exactly right by the county government. It's not our problem. Tough. I think I would like to see it say, hey, let's maybe look at this just a little bit. Maybe there's a little something that can be done to assist these local residents.
Right. So you've signed this as president, saying, "I'm Michael Jenkins, being an employee of Century, hereby acknowledge any county recommendations and/or agree to make the required revisions to the supplied plans to comply with the development order."
That was on a building permit, on building my house. That's what that was, because I had to sign that in order to get the building permit. That was basically complying with the county requirement that I put in a stormwater system, which is basically the plan that I have here that was approved by the county back in 1984.
It
So
says this lot is required to have a stormwater retention swale adjacent to the roadway, according to the development order filed in 1986.
Exactly, and I did that, as many other residents did too. So everything was put in place correctly, it's just never been maintained. So that's the only problem with it, and to bring it up to a standard that is acceptable today is kind of incomprehensible. As far as the stormwater system, we don't really have to have a geotech go out and study it. The stormwater system was approved and it functioned as it was supposed to. There's just, unfortunately, there's never been any maintenance on it. Never. So that's why the road is falling apart and the stormwater system needs some tweaking. But that's basically it. And if you just say, well, I'm sorry, we don't have to do anything about it, then the county government is deserting their local residents, is how I look at it. I'm sorry.
Commissioners, I just interject. Mr. Jenkins keeps saying it's the county's property. It's not the county's property. The property was dedicated, but since it was never accepted, it's not a county road now. That's just...
I beg to differ with you there. If you don't own it, who does? I don't own it.
I haven't done any title work there.
I know, but you're doing a little circle here. You own the property by virtue of the plat being recorded, according to legal opinions I've had. The title, but I don't own it. I can't go out and touch the road. It's a public road. I have to get a permit from the county to do anything. I was requested by the road department. I wanted to put a little drainage across there. I had to go get a permit from the county to touch that road. Now tell me, if it's not county property, I had to get a request.
It has not been accepted by the county.
I understand what you're saying. I understand for maintenance, but it is county-owned property.
It's not been accepted for the county for maintenance.
Right, for maintenance. Absolutely. Of course not. It was because a glitch fell back in 1986.
And it's the policy of the county not to
maintain the property.
Absent board action,
right,
not to accept it for maintenance unless the road...
I understand,
okay.
Exactly.
Just to make sure we're all clear.
But it was done according to the standards back in 1986. It just fell between the cracks. I've got all the documentation that's in your, thing. So I'm just asking you, don't close the door on your local citizens and continue to, which is all good what we're saying here about, boat ramps and everything else. You're talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about a pretty small amount for local people.
Mr. Jenkins, did you hear us say that the boat ramp money we talked about earlier is only money that we got from the sales tax, and it can only be spent at...
I understand. I'm not trying to pick on that one thing. I'm just saying that, we're not talking about a whole lot, and these are local people, local residents.
How many, Buddy, about how much would it cost to do these improvements so we could...
The road itself, they have that, don't they?
Well, no, it's not.
Just estimate, guesstimate.
Our estimate was $100,000. It was $100,371. Now, Mr. Jenkins was referring to the $30,000 for asphalt, but there was some drainage in there, and driveway connections that would have to be connected to make the drainage work correctly.
If we don't go out there and address the drainage along with the pavement, then the next complaint I hear is the water running off the pavement is going into somebody's yard out there, and they're going to be on us about that.
The pavement's the same. Well, I don't think we would be suggesting changing the...
I understand that, but still, there's certain things when you pave, you've got to do it right and to make sure it drains off of the roadway.
I understand, and everything's there. Everything's in place. You don't have to change anything.
You're saying that the swells are already in place out there?
Yes, swells are there. What's happened, though, over the years, grass has grown up, and so they don't flow as well, but it's never going to work. And the thought of going in there and tearing up driveways is incomprehensible. You don't want to tear up people's driveways.
When did you buy out there and build?
Let's see, been 6 years ago, I bought a lot and built a house on it.
Well, this thing was in 1984 when it was platted and went through this process.
Yes, sir.
In 96 is when the comp and LDC come in that took and changed a lot of things in this county.
I understand.
And that's, presently, as I understand, the comp and LDC is what we got to go by.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why you can get out and say you don't have to do anything. I'm just asking for common sense for residents to maybe consider looking at doing some things.
How many residents are on this road, just to guess?
I think there's maybe 30 lots.
Okay.
Are they all occupied?
I think there's about 4 that never were built on. The rest of them are, just local people living there.
Louis, can you zoom in on it? Because you've got the parcel right there, don't you?
I think that is it, yes.
Yeah, so 2. It's just that one road, sir?
Yes, it's just one, it's a little dead-end road, little cul-de-sac road.
That, okay.
Buddy,
That's the one to the north.
Have residents done anything else other than an MSBU to come up with the money? Did any other solutions that you can think of?
No, ma'am.
Just
if the board doesn't pick to do it, then there's only one avenue, and that's
the MSBU.
Either privately funded or through an MSBU.
Mm-hmm. Is the situation with this road and the dedication an abnormality in our county?
No, ma'am.
It's not happening.
Are there more roads? I'm sorry.
There's other roads out there similar to this situation.
This situation
yes.
dedicated to the county.
I'm not sure it's ever been run up quite this far as having documentation to show that everything was put in according to an approved plan. That's what I don't think we have. See, this was actually A development order was in place, everything was put in, there's even proof where the county went out and inspected everything. I have engineering reports, they inspected everything. It just never got, the developer back then, a lot of roads didn't get, never went before the board, but they still end up being maintained. It's just kind of like, well, this wasn't maintained, so be it. And I understand, it's a hard call, but I'm just asking for some consideration for, some local people.
Just
Any other
concerned
comments?
about, if we open a can of worms, can we put the lid back on?
Yeah, because this is not the only subdivision that has come up here and asked this board to do the same thing you're asking.
Right, but I'm not sure that have other people been able to provide this much documentation to validate that everything was put in correctly.
Okay.
I mean, this is all county documents, not my documents. These are all your documents.
Let me get some comments from the audience. Ms. Nielsen?
Mary Nielsen, Nielson. I am familiar with many neighborhoods who were platted in Walton County prior to 1984. And so they were of similar age, older age. And those particular neighborhoods had a nice recorded plat. And on that plat, it specifically stated long before 1984 whether the road was a private road or a public road or public right-of-way on the plat. And my question to you is, have you been provided with a legible copy of the plat? That's not the plat.
Buddy, could you address that, please?
And in the future, if you have not, when questions such as this come up, I do suggest that legible, large-size, readable plats are provided to you at the county's expense so that you have a clear understanding of what is or is not contained, not only on the diagram of the plat, but on the dedication paragraphs of the plat, which state this or that. And the other thing is that if you open the can of worms to a piece of property, a roadway, that is your property or is not your property, you're opening up this whole conversation to many other parcels in the county. And you're also, if you go ahead and give $100,000 and order $100,000 of work to this property that is possibly theirs, not yours, then how is the same conversation not going to come forward on roads that are actually yours and that we need other services as well? So it's a bag of worms, and I suggest that the plats all be legible for you and all be in your packets long before this conversation takes place for this one or any other one. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Moy?
My name is Carrie Nell Moye, M-O-Y-E. I do not know Mr. Jenkins. I have never met Mr. Jenkins. I do not know where the Sugar Estate, Sugar Cove Lane happens to be. But I do know this, as a quasi-intelligent citizen of Walton County, I have listened to what this man has put before you, and it seems to me he has done an awful lot of investigation, has studied it, which I wish way back many years ago when I was a teacher, if I thought a student had gone to the extent he had, to see what he was putting before you. I do not see it as opening a can of worms. Oh, don't go to sleep, Mark.
Oh, I'm not.
I see it as a gentleman who is representing his home and the home of his neighbors, and he has gone beyond what the usual person would stand up and say. I've come before you before. I'm being paved on the west side, the north side, and the east side, and you're not paving my little road. And we know, we've gone through that. But I see this as something he has done a great deal of research on, and it comes over as being very intelligent research, and I think there are times when one must make an exception to a rule. I don't think this is opening a can of worms. You pick any group of people or a little neighborhood that you have in South Walton, now you're going to sleep. You can't do that. Anyway, I don't mean to be facetious. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm trying to be very serious and just make sure that everybody listens, because I do think this Mr. Jenkins has presented a very knowledgeable
case before you, and that if you look at it as a situation that they were caught in, obviously the county slipped up somewhere. I don't know where. He doesn't really know where, but he has everything behind him, and it is documented that the county did owe this to what he was asking for, and he's just trying to clarify a mistake that was made, 31 years ago. And so, as just someone who's observing and listening and trying to be a part of this county, I just want to say we ought to at least consider the exception to the rule here, because he's made a darn fine argument for himself.
Thank you, Ms. Moy. Do you have the deed, the plat, buddy?
Don't remember the question, but I got the plat.
Dedication of the road.
Yeah, the dedication in there.
Yeah, and Mark spoke on the dedication. I mean, on the road itself does not say public or private, and Mark spoke on the dedication. I mean, it's on the road itself, it does not say.
Correct, there's a dedication on the plat, but there's
Right.
been no acceptance of the road as for maintenance. There's a dedication of the road to the county, but there's been no acceptance of the road for maintenance.
Have we reviewed Mr. Jenkins' paperwork thoroughly?
I've reviewed whatever he gave Buddy came to our place, yes.
Sure, Chairman.
And I don't think anything he says is factually incorrect. I just wanna make sure
I
that-
understand.
Yes, I presented this, it was 3 months ago, and I gave the documentation showing the plat, showing where it was dedicated and all the signatures. Now, there is a legal opinion here. Does the county own the property? It seems pretty clear. I've developed a lot of subdivisions in my life, and I understand the process of what it goes through. And according to my legal opinion, which, Mr. Davis might, want to argue with me there, by virtue of the recording of the plat, when it says it's dedicated to Walton County, it does belong to Walton County. I am not allowed to touch that right away without permission from Walton County. So if it's not Walton County's property, it's like, well, who does it belong to? It belongs to nobody. It does belong to Walton County. Now, absolutely, there is an ordinance in place, I understand, that gives you the right to deny maintenance of it because of something that happened a long time ago or didn't happen. But I know that agencies of the county government do enforce the actual original stormwater design that was approved by the county. They enforce it. I have a document, that document you were reading was from the county planning department, and other people had to go through the same thing. Well, we were required to comply with the stormwater system that was approved by the county. But now we say, well, wait a second, aren't you guys going to take care of it? No, we can't take care of it because it never came before the board. And I understand that, but I'm saying that be reasonable. Anyway, that's all I can say. But we have already visited.
Mr. Jenkins, the stormwater plan you had to go through planning to get approval. Was that for your house?
No. The stormwater plan was put in back in 1986.
No, but you said you had to get approval for.
I'm sorry, the document actually reads it's a little misleading how you read the document. It is actually a standard planning department document it's a boilerplate document that says you have to sign this. It's a boilerplate document. It has nothing specific to the subdivision except for the specific dimensions of the swale. That's a boilerplate document that everybody has to sign to and get a building permit, that you have to comply with whatever the stormwater system requires you to do. The stormwater system was in place, and I have the stormwater system. It's actually from your archives, the stormwater system.
Madam Chairman, do we have a motion on the floor at all?
We do. We have a motion and a second to
And what was-
not approve.
Okay.
Well,
I
to
call a
approve.
question.
No, we have a motion and a second to accept the staff's recommendation.
And staff's recommendation is
Not to approve.
not to approve. Yeah, okay. I call a question at this point.
Okay. Do we have a motion? We have a second to call the question?
All in favor?
No, so we have to have a second.
To call the question.
Call the
yeah.
question.
Second.
Second. And now, all in favor of calling the question? Aye.
Aye.
That's parliamentary procedure. You haven't been doing
We
it.
got law.
No, we got our rules.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we need to vote. We have a motion to accept staff's recommendation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Okay, so, we have accepted staff's recommendation that you would need to bring the road up to condition and work on the drainage. So sorry. Thank you for coming. Okay, next is Brandon Oakes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is requesting your direction on the sewage problem that we have at Brandon Oaks subdivision that's located just north of here. To give you a little bit of history, in July of last year, the board took it up and had some discussion about it, discussed some escrow account, developers' escrow fees that were being held as part of the potential solution. Fast forward to April the 13th of this year, the city of Freeport took up the same issue and discussed it. As you know, this particular subdivision is in the county outside of the city limits of Freeport. However, it is in the city's franchise area. Long story short, we have some residences in there that are on septic systems, and we have, through discussions, talked about ways and means to get them off of those systems and get them onto Freeport sewer system. So Anna Hudson, our staff engineer, has met with the city of Freeport, had some discussions. We have some numbers for you, and I'll let her come up and talk about those numbers, and we would request your direction moving forward.
Could I, before Anna starts, I want to give some background, and then, of course, it used to be my district, and then it's now Mr. Chapman's district, but way back in 2007 or so, when it was my district, I met with the mayor at that time, and they were supposed to put in sewer lines and all, and after a whole lot of discussion, I was told that they put in those sewer lines, and that they were ready. We had the discussion about the city of Freeport letting people hook up so much a month, like Regional Utilities does, but the mayor at that time told me that no, the city couldn't do that. And I think it is, I mean, that's the initial, but of why I think more people aren't hooked on in there. They can't afford it, you know. So, Mr. Chapman, I'll let you take it from there, you know.
Well, I've had several discussions with the city's attorney and also the president of the council there, along with another council member concerning this. We're trying to come up with a solution to try and address the problem that's in there. This is a subdivision that's probably 14 or 15 years old. Yeah. It was originally a pasture for cattle. It's now a housing project. And the design of the swells and stormwater in there was nothing I think we would allow today. However, it was approved at the time. But when these swells fill up that are between the two homes or between each home that's out there, obviously that much water there can't perk. The sewer lines or sewer system drain field cannot perk. And so it leaches up to the top and subsequently runs downhill to some additional homes that are not part of this particular development. And this is causing a concern not only to us but the residents there concerning the bacteria that can be coming out of them septic tanks. In talking with the city on this, we've thrown several options out there. Council was with me on each one of these, and what I have tried to get accomplished has been kind of taking a long time. Seems like for whatever reason it doesn't become a topic of discussion at the council meeting up there. So in looking at what the approximate cost, it cost about $5,700 to put this system in, you know, grinder pumps, all that other stuff that goes with it, for the city to charge each person. Most of those people in there, well, probably all them people in there cannot afford $5,700 to hook up. The only thing is, if their sewer system fails, they can't get a recharge or permit to go in there and fix it, and like it was, it has to hook up. So that puts a pretty healthy burden on them financially to try and hook into that. So, make a long story short, in trying to come up with a solution to this, I'll go ahead and maybe put this in the form of a motion. And then, Anna, you might want to chime in there on whatever numbers that you presently have available. Apparently, before I make the motion, the tap fees, apparently by law, cannot be waived by the city.
No, the other way around.
I'm sorry, impact fees, excuse me, impact fees. Tap fees can. So I would propose that we, in response to the city's letter to us about this, to ask them to waive the tap fee and declare it a health emergency there, and then we bid out the rest of the contract for construction, doing it ourselves. The question was asked, can their water and sewer people accommodate this in a reasonable amount of time? The answer was no. They cannot do it themselves. So if it was to allow the city to go ahead and make that with putting the money in there, it may take a year and a half, 2 years before they get to it, because they just do not have the personnel and all to do it. I think it's serious enough that we need to go ahead and declare the health emergency and do it ourselves. We would end up having to pay the impact fee to the city as part of this thing, but they would put a little skin in the game at $2,000 per tap fee. So with that being said, I would just go ahead and make a motion that we send this response back to the city of Freeport in response to their letter, asking them to waive the impact fee. The tap fee. Waive the tap fee, and I don't know where we get the declaration of a health emergency, I guess, to the health department, Mark?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Which I think,
we've had those discussions.
Stan, you've had discussions with them, and that seems like it's something that can be do. Yes. And then see what response we get back from the city on the tap fee. You know, whether they'll even do anything. The only other option available to us, if this somehow gets tied up, can't get done, is to revoke their franchise area there and turn it over to somebody else.
I'll second.
Let me say a couple of things, Commissioner.
Discussion.
We would need to come back with a resolution supported by a letter from the health department declaring the state of emergency. But I would state of emergency, a health emergency. I would consider your motion authorization for us to go get that information from the health department. We have it, but to bring it forward,
I'll make it part of the
I
motion.
say we have it. We're getting it from them. Secondly, the question I'm sure is in everybody's mind is how can we do this on private property? Well, the answer is A, it's a health emergency, and B, we are somewhat on the hook here. The development order for this subdivision, whenever it was, 2006 or 7, actually said that once water and sewer was available, that there would be no more septic tanks in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, the county, for a period of time, continued to issue building permits and septic permits in the area or in the neighborhood, even though water and sewer lines and tap lines were available. Now, in my opinion, the city also has some responsibility here, and that's why I think it's a good idea to ask the city to consider waiving their tap fees, because under Florida statutes, there's a responsibility by the city to notify these owners that water and sewer would be available and that they should change over. The third thing is, assuming all this gets done, I think the second issue is the actual drainage issue, and we've talked some about that. But this will go a long way to being able, and I don't want to step on any engineer's feet, but would go a long way to making that drainage issue significantly better, because most of those yards, if you've been down there, have swells in them and I don't mean drainage swells, I mean swells for the septic systems. So there's no place for water to collect in yards and drain off in a reasonable fashion. They get pushed into these ditches between the houses and then pushed out into another drainage area. And oftentimes we don't know this, but we have some information that it will leave the neighborhood. And of course the concern is if these septic systems are beginning to fail, which we believe in high rains at this point they are, then, we're going to have bacteria leaving the neighborhood at some point, and it's not that far away from tributaries to the bay. So this is a problem we feel like we have some responsibility for, that the city has some responsibility for, and I think Mr. Chapman's motion is a way to start getting to where we can get this problem addressed. We do have $145,000 in an escrow account from the developer that we can use toward this project.
How much you say overall, Mr. Chapman?
Anna,
Cost?
have you figured it out as far as if you back out the tap fees and adding in the 145, what would be the other amount?
Well, just to clarify, all these costs come from the city, so even though you ask the city to waive the $2,000 tap fee, you would ultimately be paying a contractor to tap it. So there will be an expense there on the county if the county chooses to go that direction. But a total cost right now, it's including the 2,000 tap, is $8,300 for 56 lots. So you're looking at $464,000 minus the $145 in escrow. So you're looking at right now about $320,000.
That's with the waiver of the tap fee.
But that's assuming that you would be paying a contractor for that same amount of work. It actually, you could get a better discount as far as you have one contractor abandoning 56 septic tanks, connecting 56 grinder pumps. So that cost could come down.
Well, that would be my intent. If we put this thing out for bid, it would be one contractor to take care of all the tap, boring, crushing of the septic tank, and reclaiming that area back as far as grass, I guess.
Well, I feel like that the city does have some responsibility. I mean, since 2006, and then it became his problem, I worked on it. I worked with the former mayor, and, promising, all this was going to be done. And then they said, well, we just can't afford it. But surely if we go in there and do the work, if they will, waive the tap fee, because what they're going to, in the end, they're still going to win, because they're going to send everybody a month a bill for water and sewer. So the city will be getting revenue once all this is done. So,
Can you explain where the impact fee?
Yeah.
Commissioner Chapman, you said something about the impact fee.
That's some statutory thing that the city puts on.
An impact fee is collected from developers and residents for the purpose of putting aside to build infrastructure for water and sewer. It's a capital account, basically. And by statute, it cannot be waived. It can be suspended, but it cannot be waived.
Who's paying the impact fee?
If, as I understood his motion, the county would basically take on the responsibility for everything but the tap fee, so that would mean the county.
Have we tried to talk to the residents to see if they would be responsible for anything? I know there's a law that says that if you have water sewer, you have a year to get.
We can make them do it. We certainly could send a letter saying water and sewer is available. You have a year to hook up.
We don't have a year.
Well, that's one issue. The second issue is the remedy is that we would do exactly what we're doing now. If they refuse to do it, essentially is take it over and do it ourselves and charge them for it. Put a charging lien on the property. We have talked to the city at one point about financing, having the owners finance this cost over a period of time. I understand the city's not interested in doing that. So,
I can guarantee you that.
And again, we can't go to this step until we can have enough information from the health department. I feel like we will get it, that this is a health and safety, a health and emergency.
And being an emergency, is there any funding because it's an emergency?
Not that I'm aware of off the top of my head, no, ma'am.
Well, who's speaking for the city of Freeport? Is there anyone here speaking for the city?
There's not.
I think their last communication to us was in the form of a letter that's in your packet. And I think they're going to sit back and wait and see how we respond to that particular letter before it moves forward.
Anna, I know you've studied this a lot. Do you see any other solution other than everybody being a little bit responsible?
I don't at this point.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know you have a lot more information than I do.
Well, typically, if a homeowner was going to connect, they pay the tap fee in order to have the utility entity to actually connect them. So, understanding that they have a limited staff and they don't feel they can do the work, waiving the tap fee, I believe, is
a fair suggestion.
And I don't want to understate this. You still have the option of a charging lien against the individual homeowners if you choose to do that.
Well, that's been the
Didn't
problem
the-
all along. They can't
Didn't the
afford it.
city get funding for this already, though? But the city of Freeport, didn't they at some point get a tap fee?
No, ma'am. No.
Did they get an impact fee?
No, ma'am. They might have got a partial impact fee from the developer at some point, but we have that, I would think. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure if they ever paid an impact fee. They may have.
That would be a question for the city, but I'm not aware that they have.
I know we have $140-something thousand that were left in that account.
The $2 million that the county, was it $2 or $4 million that the county lent to the city of Freeport for them to connect people onto water and sewer, and they never did. And then, see, you were in that meeting whenever. Anyway, they gave us some money back. Phil was in office, no, he was finance director, and kept on bringing up that we weren't getting paid anything at all. So wasn't that money supposed to go to water and to tap fees? If I remember correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought, yeah. I'm just that old, I remember. But Cecilia was there too, I remember, yeah.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other comments before I open it up to the audience?
And what is our motion second to ask
Just allow Mark.
them to go forward and ask the city to waive the tap fee?
Tap fee and negotiate with the city about how we'd go about
Yeah.
doing this and reserving the possibility of a charging lien against each of the homeowners, as I understood the motion.
Yes.
Okay, any comments from the audience? Ms. Harris?
And before we take a vote, I'd like to know what the county's responsibility would be if financially.
I'm sorry.
Like the county's responsibility financially at the end when we're kind of done with Anna.
What did we ever do last year about this? In the minutes, Mr. Chapman made a motion last year, and y'all voted on it and approved it. Has it just sat there for a year, and the $143,000 that y'all voted to spend last year is just still sitting in the account? And I mean, y'all had a pretty good plan last year. You want me to read you the minutes?
No, I've got them.
Oh,
So what happened to that plan? Y'all voted to do it and just didn't do it?
no.
No.
Go ahead, Mark.
Essentially, we took that to the city because it's the city's franchise area, so we have to have an agreement with them. And to say we've negotiated over a long period of time would be an understatement. Yes, ma'am. We've attempted to get it to an agreement, and then we got this letter from the city saying we would like something from you formally from the board. It was time to put it back on the agenda and get a formal.
And do I understand that City of Freeport owes y'all $2 million?
No.
Is that
was
Sarah?
resolved.
They paid back $1 million of
They
that.
paid.
a few
So
years
they
ago.
owe us,
Yeah.
they paid back $1 million. Did they
Yeah,
pay?
and that settled the debt.
So we wrote off $1 million and they paid $1 million.
There was only 400,000 written off, if you will. The rest of it.
They had done a
They've
little-
been sending in and collecting and sending us some, but it was, 400 was part of the agreement that we would forgive for them to continue moving on, but they did give us a
So
million.
they owed us $2 million and they paid, how much?
$1 million.
$1 million.
So $1 million we wrote off.
No.
If I owe you $2 million and
part
you
of
pay
that-
me $1 million, in my mind,
No,
you
no,
still
no.
owe me $1 million plus interest.
This all started before I got on the board, but I understand that it was $2 million. Initial was a loan, and then once they started calculating all the fees that they've been collecting when people hooked on, it took that $2 million down to 1.4, and then they paid $1 million, and the 400 was, I'm not sure the term we used was.
But didn't our loan
Satisfied.
agreement say they paid interest and we wrote off all the interest too?
I don't know.
I think the loan agreement, because I have a copy, but I think the loan agreement said they would pay $2 million plus interest, and they never paid any interest. So whatever they paid for a few tap fees, I don't know. But it seems like we shouldn't be in the loaning business to Freeport when we have all these roads down south that every time we have big rains, they flood and people can't even get to their houses. So I'm not sure how we keep giving Freeport all this money and we can't fix all of the roads in the county that we have, and that all these people come to y'all at every meeting wanting y'all to fix roads. When it rains, they can't even get to their road, but yet we'll go out there and fix Freeport sewer. That's all. But I think they still owe us $1 million.
Come on. Come on up next. Betty?
It's Betty Letcher, Letcher. Is it my understanding in this subdivision that they can get sewer hookup and not pay anything?
That is the proposal right now, Betty.
Okay.
The majority of the people that live there are low to moderate income. A lot of them are rentals. They belong to somebody else. And to ask them to come up with $5,700 out of their pocket to do this, since the city will not finance any portion of it, then they just can't do it, and we've got to do something.
And as I understand the motion, Ms. Lecter, we would reserve the right to have a charging lien on the property.
We might be able to find the actual owner, not the renter, and do like Mark is talking about and just file that type of
Okay,
lien.
why I'm concerned because we just bought property last summer on Bay Grove, and we just paid $71.20 to hook up, and it may even cost us more. They hadn't hooked up yet, and I'm just like, and there was no finance. I mean, it's cash up front.
I don't mean to correct the
confused.
commissioner. The actual cost is $8,300 per lot. But when you kick in what the county has in escrow now,
Well,
it would
okay, because
reduce
we're
it.
not sure of ours. I've already paid them that, and and I'm sure there's a lot of other sections in Freeport that are going to come up too, and just sounds like a whole bunch. I don't want to deprive people of things,
Well, Betty, we have tried to make sure that our building department is aware of all this that may have sewer, and also the health department, so they don't come in there and inadvertently give them an order, a permit to refix their sewer system. That if it does go down, they're going to have to hook it up.
Oh, yeah, that's how I am at Inlet
That's what we're
Beach.
trying to
Yeah,
do
and I'm
now
on
to
a
keep that from
septic
happening.
tank, which I like better, but I don't have a choice now. So anyhow, I was just trying to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Who has the franchise fees right now? The franchise rights right now?
The city of Freeport owns the franchise in that area. Yes, ma'am.
I think we need to discuss the franchise rights if
This doesn't work, I think we do. Yes, ma'am.
That'd be the next thing.
That will be, you know, and I tend to agree with Ms. Harris. Yes, we have roads that need to be fixed, but this is polluting the bay every day.
Well, we don't know that. we think
Oh, come on,
it has
you
the
see an
potential
area all
to
over
do
the
that.
place. I mean, go take a test sample if you don't think it's polluting the bay. Or it's going to, we're going to have a massive failure or another storm, and that bay, we need to protect that bay. That's part of our livelihood. So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign?
nay.
41. Okay, moving on to gasoline and diesel fuel supply.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is request to award, approve, and authorize the chairwoman to sign contract number 017-017. It's for gasoline and diesel fuel supply services with the lowest responsible bidder, that being Retiff Oil and Fuel LLC. This is for our bulk fuel supply, and we would recommend your approval.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
Motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Tax deeds.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is request to authorize the chairwoman to sign the necessary application for the board to apply for tax deeds for 16 properties that are valued by the property appraiser at more than $5,000 each pursuant to Section 197-502, subsection 3 of Florida statutes.
And before you have a motion, just by a brief way of explanation, because this will come up every year. We are required to buy tax certificates on properties that there are no tax certificates sold at the auctions. So we get the tax certificates, and after, sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's 3 years or 5 years, we have to apply or make the application to the tax collector to have tax deeds sold on those properties. That does not mean that we bid on those properties. When we get this list, and if the properties are valued at more than $5,000, We are required by statute to fill out the application and put them up for auction for a tax deed to be sold. I get the list, or the Office of County Attorney gets the list. We send them out to Public Works to see if there's any of these properties we would want to bid on for whatever reason. Frankly, my 4 years, I know for a fact we've never bid on them at this stage. If no one buys a tax deed out of this process, eventually, and I can't remember the time frames, but eventually the property goes into a list called unclaimed property, essentially, and then we actually take ownership of the property after a number of years, after it's not bought, after a tax deed is not sold. The advantage of getting it then versus now is we get statutory protections for underground gasoline problems, or what we get basically a blank check in terms of protection for taking ownership of that property at that point versus bidding on them at this point. So I just wanted to explain that to you guys because we have 2 new commissioners. It happens every year, and we send them to Public Works to make sure we don't want to bid on them, and we usually do not.
Mark, in our packet is about a dozen pages of properties.
Now,
where's the 16?
They should have been separated. The properties that are less than 5,000, we don't have to apply for tax deeds on those. So, and we sent the 16. I'm sorry, I didn't separate them. I should have.
Motion to approve?
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion, second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. That's all we have.
Mr. Tusa.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The first 2 agenda items regarding the state parks, Jason Cutshaw is going to handle, and then I'll be up for the next 2.
Welcome, Jason.
Ma'am. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Jason Cutshaw, I'm the Director of Administration for the TDC. Item 29 is a request to approve and authorize the chairwoman to sign the interlocal agreement with Topsail Hill Preserve State Park for an entrance fee program. This is a program, this will be our 3rd year on that program, and it's been very successful. It really opens up the opportunities to recreate inside our natural resources that we've got in Walton County and raise some awareness for the state parks. So that would be item 29 on that. That was a budgeted item from that was budgeted last year. And we want to approve on that one, or you want me to go to the next one?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Questions from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you all. The next item, item 30, is a request to approve and authorize the chairwoman to sign an interlocal agreement with Grayton Beach State Park for an entrance fee program. We'll be utilizing a budget, what the TDC already had in contingency funding for this program. This is a new program that we have, so we've expanded from Topsail to also include Grayton, again, to open up those recreation opportunities and resource management, or resource recreation ops for the guests.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Jeff Talbert, T-A-L-B-E-R-T. I'd like to see you not pass this to give money to Grayton Beach for the entrance fees. I pulled the attendance numbers for Grayton Beach for last summer. Grayton Beach has 77 parking spots down at the beach, 33 at the boat ramp, giving them a total of 110. That includes handicap spots. For the 20-week period from May to September, the average number of cars that came in was 107 a day. If you take just the MOU period for last summer, that number is 120 cars a day. They have to park those number of cars, people have to go to the beach, they also have to accommodate people coming from the campground as well. So also during the MOU period during the last year, the cost to pay for that, for the number of cars that came in, would be $62,000, $12,000 over what the TDC has requested, $50,000. So it should fall short, and that does not count the number of people who walked or rode their bike in, which they charge $2 for that. And just to give you an idea, in the 10 years prior, in the 2007, 2008, Grayton Beach had 104,000 people, campground total, come into the park. Last year, in the 20-week period from May to September, they had 108,000 come in. That's just in the 20-week period. That doesn't count the other 7 months of the year. So I hate to see a program that is encouraging more people to go in at a faster rate than the park is able to handle due to its facilities. And the last thing I'll say is the state park is fixing to start a sewer project in there. They're fixing to put sewer down the beach, down the shop, various other areas, and that's due to start any day now, and that will go for 120 days. I'm not very good at math, but that's through the whole summer, the busy season. So that's what I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, wouldn't this be just day trippers? 'Cause rather than people going into like camp and that sort of thing? It's just day trippers?
Yes, ma'am. This
Did
would
I
only,
get that right?
just like Top Sell, it would only cover the entrance fee for the day use folks that are going into the park. It's I also got with the district and look at their statistical data in order to pull for that time period, and it was, Jeff was right, calculated correctly according to that time period. If they get the same amount this year, again, they'll follow the same policies that the Park Service. It's all within their control. The one in, one out method, or the as people leave, they'll let others come into the park. It's just more of a benefit to be able to go, hey, you might have never been to this park before, so here's an opportunity for you to go and see it and see the resources that are
But
there.
the Park Service knows how many spots they got in there.
Yes, sir.
And it's not uncommon that they shut the gate because it's full.
Absolutely not, sir. Some of the parks I worked at in the past was a heavy day use park, and what we'd end up doing is looking at, okay, well, we've had 10 cars leave, now we're going to open it up, we'll let some in, have somebody patrol the parking lot, look at it, and say, okay, now we've got room for more. So yes, sir.
Jason, why the difference in price, 25 and 50,000?
50 is what we had in contingency, so what we didn't want to do is say we want to go into reserves and ask to bring money forward unless needed. Every month we would be invoiced by the park, and so we'd be able to look at their trend and make a prediction and come back before that time period be up if we needed to bring money forward or transfer money from another account once we're closer to the end of our year.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we've been trying to get this in the makes for some time. Do you
Yes,
think
ma'am.
is the sewer going to be kind of separate? Do you see that as a hindrance to the beachgoers? Ideally, you would do this in the winter or off season. It must be an emergency or something.
Yes, ma'am. Usually in the past, any of the projects I manage, we try, idealistically, they tried to always do the project in the downtime of the season. Sometimes funding didn't allow it. But I can always work with the management team there in the district in Tallahassee to find out, where it would be at and what kind of impact it would have.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, ready for the vote. All in favor? You remember the vote is to accept this. Motion second to accept. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Hello again. I'll handle the next two items. At the last meeting, the board approved for us to move forward with the purchase of the property across from Amalfi Coast condos over in Miramar Beach. And I believe we'll be finalizing that at today's meeting under legal's section. But I had a call from a real estate agent after the last meeting when we moved forward with the purchase. And there is a house next door to and you can see it up there on the screen. There's a house right adjacent to the property we purchased that is for sale. And they are asking $1.625 million for that house. And I thought I'd bring this to your attention to see if there was any interest in exploring the idea of looking further at this property. It could obviously expand the beach, could give us some. One nice thing about this, I talked to Brian Kellenberger about this, is instead of starting from scratch for a restroom facility, we could utilize that structure that's there, and we could tear it down to its foundation and utilize its plumbing and pilings for a restroom facility, bathhouse. So that actually would save us a little bit of money when we went to develop that, because it would already obviously be in place. So I think also with the sensitivity of the deed restrictions that were in place before we moved in there, it might be something we want to look at. But obviously, I'm just here to ask if y'all would like to look at this further and perhaps get some appraisals on it, get some information on it, and bring that back to you.
Could you see a pavilion going in with bathrooms as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, this would also, we had some comments made concerning if we went into the Amalfi property and built structures, that it would have an impact upon the view to the Gulf.
Correct.
But with an existing structure there, over on the far west side, then all we're looking at is maybe increasing the width of the boardwalk on that
Correct.
piece of property. Make it ADA.
Yes, sir.
It's something to consider.
This one's like a 20, 30-foot drop. So would.
Yeah, we'd have to do some switchbacks, but
Yeah,
we
we'd
have
have
that
to
at
do
all
some
we have
switchbacks,
that at all locales. Is it ideal for ADA? No, but could it fit the bill? Yeah. I mean, we have some other areas where it's a little easier to get on and off the beach. But nevertheless, I mean, it could still be ADA with a ramp. So, any other questions on that one?
So do we want to go out for appraisals?
I think it's worth looking into.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
we
agree.
can, we can always say no, but I think if we don't have the information, then we can't make an informed decision.
Is that a motion?
That was a motion.
Well, let's include that you authorize staff to do a due diligence and a title search.
Of course.
Yes, thanks.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
And related to this property, wanted to get some direction from the board. So I had a conversation with South Walton Utilities in regards to the spray field that's just adjacent to the Amalfi Coast condos. And they are open to us bringing perhaps a proposal back to their board for consideration. I did initially have a conversation with the general manager in regards to possibly doing something with just parking for this beach access. And she said that, in her opinion, that the board would probably not be inclined to really enter into discussions in that. But she said, maybe there might be some other options. So I've been kind of thinking since then is, maybe if there's some options for some type of municipal park or something there that we can take advantage of. So I just wanted to see what your direction might be for me to go back and talk to them and at least maybe have a more in-depth dialogue and maybe involve their board.
Could we also, if we're going to do that, have them look at a combination, a hybrid type, park type, plus some additional parking?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I'd be happy to continue that dialogue with them. But I just wanted, before I went any further, and have the general manager talk to their board if to see what the wishes of the BCC was.
Right. And how soon do you think we'll start looking at the engineering because I want to make sure the citizens are really, I know there's a scenic corridor group down there.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Sullivan is part of that group. And they formed a group, and I want to make sure they have input in where the parking places go, the design, the whole gamut of.
Yes, ma'am. I've received some emails and I filed them away. So when we're ready to do that, I'll reach out personally to those folks, and obviously the condo association will get their involvement. Make sure that we're having all these different thoughts and considerations taken into account, and obviously we'll have a public workshop on that as well. So we'll definitely be doing that. As far as timing, I think that in light of what's going on right now with the Dune Allen purchase, I'd say realistically it'd probably be about a good 6 months before we're ready to move on to that phase. It just takes a while for us with the design permitting to even get to that phase of the project.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
So do you have direction kind of now? Did we give you direction?
You did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One other note, we have a couple other properties that we were looking at, in particular the Oyster Lake Outfall properties and the Highland House B&B property. And I've had some conversations with the owners of both of those properties, and they're kind of wanting to know what our thoughts and wishes are on moving forward with those. And so I think just out of all due respect to those owners, we should maybe let them know where our thoughts are on that. So I wanted to get a little direction from the board on those two parcels, if there's any interest there in moving forward. Just FYI, the Oyster Lake Outfalls collectively is $6.5 million, and the Highland House is $3.39 million.
6.5 and what, Jay?
3.39 for the Highland House.
How much money do we have left?
Good question. We have $6.7 million, and there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk to the board about in regards to budgeting. One in particular is the funding of the facilities for the two beach properties that we just purchased. And so we have money for the Dune Allen, but we obviously will need money for the Miramar Beach and for the Seagrove. And so I'd like to take the $1.3 million for those two facilities out of that $6.7 million. For us to take those funds out of our operation budget, it's a bit of a hit for us to do that. So I wanted to just kind of throw that out there.
Well, I'm not good at math either,
Yeah.
but I think I've figured out that we can't buy this property and do what we need to do to the facilities. So maybe at this time we work on what we've got. I don't know.
I have 4 million left.
Hey, 4 million left? Okay.
Yeah. So 6.7, and you want to take out the 1.3, that's 5.4. And then if we could get this people down to 1.4, I'm just guessing, that would leave 4 million.
That's about 4 million. And that's probably still good for us to purchase something. I mean, obviously Highland House is 3.39. And then the Oyster Lake Outfall, I mean, that's 6.5, so obviously that's over. So I don't know if that is going to,
I know
keep
that's,
us from considering that, but
6.5
And
will
there
take a
could be,
major majority.
excuse me, sorry, go ahead. There could be something that comes up too, another, I mean, I'm really interested in the Oyster Lake, but, I mean, if we don't have the money, we don't. So, go ahead. Do you have something else?
I would like to look at other properties.
okay. And I've had some other people who have been contacting me, and I've been in discussion. They're not quite ready to bring that back to you, but I can be probably the next meeting or two.
Jay, refresh my memory. What is the appraisals on Oyster Lake and Highland?
I have that right here. Hold on one second.
I believe there's 2 parcels at Oyster Lake.
Yeah, Luke Bouchy and Clay.
So the Oyster Lake appraisals, where's that on here? Okay, here it is. So one appraisal came in at 5.4 and the other came in at 2.6, which I thought was low, and I contacted the appraiser about that, and under his consideration, he doesn't believe one of the lots is a buildable lot, and that's why it is a lower appraised value. It is a double lot, so that appraisers are, I guess, kind of like lawyers a little bit. You ask them an opinion on something, and you're going to get a different answer. So, one appraiser saw it as a buildable lot, and one did not. So, and that's why the difference is in the appraised values.
Which lot is this you're talking about?
That is, I'm sorry, that is the one adjacent to the outfall. That is the Bouchy property. Mm-hmm.
What's the Clay property?
The Clay property is averaged appraised 2.2, and they're asking 2.5. And then for the Highland House, just to throw that out there, the average appraised value is 2.7.
So the 2 lots at Oyster Lake are 6.7?
6.5.
6.5.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we have 6.7. Right.
But you wouldn't have enough money to do the improvements at the other 2 parks, is that
Correct.
correct? You need to take some of that money and shift it over to
Correct.
operations so you can fix it.
Yes, sir.
And that's
1.3 is what we're projecting.
You're down to that 4 mil.
And Seacrest and Seagrove are still the areas that we're kind of weak on.
Still interested in that, and I've had a couple of real estate agents call me and say they're kind of working on some things behind the scenes with owners. I think they may be knocking on doors, and so I don't have anything to report back on that right now. But I had 2 real estate agents who contacted me in the last couple of weeks and say they're working on some things. So I don't know if anything will materialize from that or not. So if it does, I'll certainly bring it back to you.
Are you sure you can't take the money out of the improvements out of another fund?
Well, I have some numbers here, and so we can talk about it. But basically, with the money that we move forward, the $15.9 million, that leaves us $19 million in reserve still. And after conversations with Melissa, we feel that we're comfortable leaving that money as it is in reserves.
All right, question is, what would you use that amount of money for out of reserves?
Well, almost
hurricane.
more than half of it is beach nourishment. So if something happens, I mean, we need that. And then some other of it is marketing, advertising. So again, in the event of a hurricane, we'd have to, kind of ramp up our marketing efforts. So we'd need those. Plus, if we have a hurricane, we're not going to have the TDT collections that we normally have. So we we need to have some money in reserves to sustain us through maybe a rough season. Any other questions on that? Okay.
How about you wise people? I don't know what to do.
And then lastly, what did I do with that sheet? I wanted to give you an update. Here it is. Just wanted to give you an update on the TDT collections for March. They were up 2.27% for a total of $1,813,178.44. So year to date, we are at $5,446,976.09, and that is up almost 10% year over year. So, any other questions for me?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a public hearing, so we would need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion and second.
Second.
Motion second to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Commissioners, the public hearing is for the purpose of considering an amendment to ordinance number 2002-05 to allow for the expenditure of funds for expressions of sympathy or congratulations by the county under certain circumstances. Commissioners, county administration has, for as long as anyone can remember, when an employee has a death in the family or an illness or sickness, will send expressions of sympathy, usually through the form of flowers or a card. The auditors in the clerk's office, when a bill came through in October or September, October, the clerk refused to pay it because the ordinance that we have for the expenditure of that type of fund did not specifically allow for the expenditure of funds for quote-unquote flowers. So at the request of the county administrator's office, we drafted an amendment to that ordinance to allow and authorize the expenditure of those funds under certain circumstances under the direction of the county administrator. We had a couple of inquiries, and just for your information, the total cost of this in fiscal year 2007, if I'm reading the email right, for flowers, is that correct, Melissa, was $237. For the fiscal year 13 was $0. For the fiscal year 14 was $250. For the fiscal year 15 was $572. For the fiscal year 16, it was $190. One of the other comments they made is when we have an employee appreciation dinner or lunch or something along those lines, we often pay for the food that we cook or that administration cooks. The auditor was concerned that there was not specific authorization for that as well. So the second part of the amendment to the ordinance in paragraph C allows for the purchase of funds for that purpose. If I understood the cost of that, it was in 2016 was $1,308, $845 in 2015, and then during the Public Works Week, luncheon cost was $1,423. Those costs have not been computed for 2016, if I'm correct. So I just want to give you a sense of what it was.
I want to make sure I understood you. We have to have authorization to spend our own money, not the county's?
Well,
Did I
the
clerk, I
clerk,
thought I heard you say.
the clerk pays all the bills, as you well know.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know. And when this particular bill came across, they were looking for that specific authorization, as they often do now, and couldn't find it, so they simply refused to pay the bill. And so the solution is to amend the ordinance.
So it's not that, I mean, I thought you were questioning that, hey, I gave $50. And
Oh,
you-
no.
Oh, okay, I'm
This
sorry.
is something
I-
the
you-
county administration
Okay, you totally,
does
okay,
with
gotcha.
employees. No, if you order it, you pay for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I got confused about what you said.
Are we doing this because it doesn't specifically say flowers? What
Yes.
does it say?
Well, the old ordinance says, for instruments of recognition to organization, employees, and volunteers within the county government and to county boards, councils, committees, and other ad hoc groups established by the county and their members. And we're adding further the expressions of sympathy or congratulations through flowers, cards, and other items to any employee, commissioner, or employee's family member as directed by the county administrator. So we can do recognition, but if you want to do it with flowers specifically for that purpose, they wanted something in the ordinance.
Madam Chairman?
I'm not an accountant, I don't understand that.
May I speak?
Sure.
I've kind of mulled this over ever since I knew it was coming on the agenda. Back in 2006, when I took office, all of a sudden the bottom fell out, and we barely had money to pay for coffee or paper towels or toilet tissue for that matter. I mean, you know, the county was really strapped. I know that we're in better times now, but I look at this particular thing and I think expressions of sympathy and that sort of thing maybe should be on an individual level. If, let's say, somebody in Stan's family was ill and we wanted to send flowers, I'd say, I'll donate $50, you know, rather than use admin money for that kind of thing. With that being said, I have an envelope in my hand. If the rest of you will, you know, it contains $100. And I'll start the fund and to start collecting money for when this happens. That we, you know, and not only us, but the directors and any employee that wants to give. And say somebody gets sick. Well, you put out the call, we want to send flowers to Stan. Anybody want to contribute, you know? Woo! I firmly believe, yeah, I firmly believe that that's the way that this needs to be handled, you know?
My sentiments.
So, end of speech, but.
Any other comments? Okay, comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Come on up, Ms. Nielsen.
I'm gonna suggest we give this to Mary to give to Marty and let her oversee it.
Mary Nielsen, I'd like to support Commissioner Commander's recommendation. I think that when you're using tax dollars, whatever source of the tax dollars they come for things like this, it's nice to do it, but it's kind of like what you do when you own a private business. If the girls in the office want to participate and the employer participates or everybody chips in, that's the way it's done. And I think that's how you should address tax dollars for these types of purposes. But on the public announcement in the newspaper, it also contained lodging and travel. And I'd like an explanation of the lodging and the travel, and have we expended any tax money for that, and under what circumstances do we do lodging and travel, other than what your sanctioned trips are to your appropriate formal things you have to go to?
The original ordinance, now, I'm not attempting to amend that part of it, but the original ordinance, which is where we got the title from,
okay,
says Walton County government may expend funds of the county for the following purposes: for meals and lodging for visiting officials or dignitaries necessary to promote intergovernmental and public-private sector coordination. Such expenditures shall not include payment for alcoholic beverages, meals and non-alcoholic refreshments in connection with recruitment proceedings for managerial employees. So that's basically it.
So is that the fund that you use when you bring all the candidates to town?
Yes.
Okay, all right. But I do like Sarah's idea. I think that's wonderful, and that's where you should go.
Okay, if we adopt Commissioner Commander's idea, we need to make sure that we specify that, you know, who we will give to, like commissioners or just, you know, so we have a clear.
And I think a cap.
Directors, wouldn't you say division directors? Who else? I mean, I'm just opening it up for discussion.
Are you doing this like an employee program type of thing, where the employees, commissioners, put money in there and that fund is set aside
If they want to, yeah.
But you're right, you got to direct, if you got 1,000
Yeah.
in there, how much is going to what and for what.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, and I think it should all be voluntary. You know, if
And,
somebody doesn't want to contribute, then their name doesn't go on the card. You know,
Or like I did, I went out and bought flowers for someone I thought I would send a sympathy for, myself.
Yeah.
This is, all we're doing here is to pass or not
Yeah,
pass this amendment.
That's correct, Commissioner.
We don't need anything to do what Commissioner Commander's saying. I mean, that's
No, in
just
fact,
goodness of your heart.
If y'all want to do that amongst yourselves, I know as the school board member, we used to call Tony Norman the collection agent because she'd come by once a week and once every other meeting and say, we sent flowers to this one, I need $50, you know. So if you can certainly do that amongst yourself, or you can direct Dee Dee to, or some other county employee to be the manager of that, your personal funds for the purpose of doing that. But if you're going to get into employees, don't do that, because we need to talk to Melissa about your employees contributing. We need to talk to Melissa about the legal, make sure I understand all the legal ramifications of that. I think there are some limitations there.
So in essence, we're saying that if you want to do it, you do it. But we're not going to create some type of program internal to ask everybody or coerce somebody to agree with it.
Correct.
And you're saying you want to take it out of funds? You want?
No,
No,
what I'm
no,
saying.
okay.
What I'm saying is,
Okay,
if
gotcha,
if
yeah.
this goes down, then if you want to send flowers to
Yes.
whomever, that's up to you.
Yeah, that's
But
all.
we're not going to mandate the directors and above
Right.
contribute to this
We're
fund.
gonna say, hey, you know, somebody just had a baby, and, we're gonna send flowers, do you wanna help? Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so we don't have a motion yet. So we need a motion to, up or down these changes, and then we will take comments, some more comments from the audience. We started without a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion that we disapprove the amendments to ordinance 202-05.
I second.
Okay, would that be all of it, or?
Just the additions. Just the addition.
What, even the Public Works luncheon we give them?
Is that in here too?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. They asked for specific authorization to spend those funds.
But it's not listed here.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
just says sympathy and congratulations.
I'm sorry, it's paragraph C on the second page of the ordinance.
Right. It's not listed in the
So
agenda.
when you say Public Works, is it the meetings specifically for Public Works? I mean, this meeting is any meeting, is that correct?
For the
No?
cost of food, non-alcoholic beverages served at a meeting, training program, workshop, or function held by Walton County and authorized pursuant to the administrative directive of the county administrator. So.
It's any meeting we hold?
If he feels like he should spend money to feed them that day, then yes. Short answer is yes.
And normally, once a year, they have a public works week.
Just a minute, if you raise your hand, you'll get to come to the podium in a minute. Please keep your comments quiet.
Our two new commissioners may not know that once a year, we have what's called as Public Works Week.
Right.
We go out to Week Air Park, and they have tractor pulls and all that kind of stuff, and we feed all of our employees at it's Public Works Week. Yeah.
And if we bring candidates in, and we want them to collectively meet with us, we do a luncheon so that we can all meet them in a social gathering as well as a professional interview gathering. So what is your motion?
I don't remember now.
Well, I said disapprove,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
we've got to decide whether it's A and C, or just A or C.
Okay.
Somebody help me.
Can you amend your motion to say, so we can talk about the other, to deny just A, and then let's talk about C?
I amend my motion.
I amend my second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to deny the sympathy, flowers, cards, etc. Okay, now do we have any comments from the audience? Any more comments? All right, seeing none, let's take a vote to do away with A. All in favor? Wait.
Not all of A, just the addition to
Just the
A.
addition.
Just-
From the
yes.
Further onward, yes.
Right. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Now, do we want to talk about C? The, the events, the Public Works Day. What's your pleasure on that?
That's about the only one I can remember we do on an annual basis, is that appreciation for Public Works and staff there. And we
And then
budget money
Christmas.
for that?
We
employee
appreciation.
luncheon
At Christmas, right? Yeah.
December.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that budgeted?
But if it's budgeted, but it doesn't say so in here,
I don't
Alex
think
ain't
they're
gonna do
going
it.
to continue to allow us to pay it,
Yeah.
is the information we got.
Well, in that case, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we leave the additional language in number C, or in letter C of section 2 of that ordinance.
Have a motion? We have a second?
I second.
Motion second. Any more comments? Comments from the audience on C? Yes, ma'am, back here in the back, on this side, pretty auburn hair, yes.
Yeah, while she's coming up, how many employees do we have? Roughly? 500, okay.
Sharon Alexander, Alexander. And I appreciate you denying that first motion, because I feel like if you're going to be using my tax dollars to send sympathy cards, I'd like to have a say in who receives that card or those flowers. Now, if we're going to do meals, I understand that meetings should be covered. I understand that the Christmas party and the tractor pull, that sounds like a lot of fun. But I would suggest that you have a budget for that and that you stick to it. $1,000, $2,000, whatever you need, but you should have a budget, you should stick to that.
Well, we do budget it. It's in the budget. We're just cleaning up some of the language so the clerk won't balk at possibly paying the bill.
Exactly.
on that.
But I'd like to know what that budget is. I'd like to know what that number is and how many people are invited and that kind of thing. And I think that should be something that you stick to.
Well, as Melissa's coming up, I just figured out if we have 500 employees, and did you say we spend roughly $1,200 on one of the events?
$1,500 for Public Works,
Okay.
$1,000 for.
That's roughly spending $2.50 per employee, you know, who.
Just
I
so
think,
that budget,
yeah.
there is a budget there and
There
that's
is a
adhered
budget,
to.
yeah.
You know, I understand that. So that's all I have to
Yes,
say.
ma'am.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Did we get it right, Melissa? Was it Public Works 1,500 and admin 1,000?
You did, and Public Works does, they bring that back to the board every year and put an amount in with that. And what we basically do is we go out and get quotes on having the food brought in, and for the employee appreciation lunch, they actually cook it, they cook the food out there at administration. So we do get quotes to try to make sure that we're doing this in the most economical way, but we do, those amounts are correct.
Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Good afternoon. My name is Bob Hudson, Hudson. Mr. Anderson, I'm going to give you a professional opinion as a CPA. And you might get a different interpretation from Melissa, but having worked with 348 units of the Boy Scouts of America that had boards and directors and all of those other things, if you had chosen, Ms. Commander, if the board had chosen to collect money, you need very clear rules, or the clerk's not even going to hold those funds. They need to know who can authorize and where the source of the dollars are. Having worked for an organization that was volunteer, except for a very small group of paid professionals, I can tell you that you need to recognize people. And if your employee appreciation dinner is that, you recognize, I'm assuming, DD employees for years of service, number of years of service, people that are retiring or whatever it happens to be. Personally, I think that's good management on your part and showing that you care for your employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Anyone else? Seeing none, let's have a vote. We have a motion to not, to leave C alone.
To include that.
Right. Okay.
To pass the ordinance as amended in C.
Very good. Thank you for that. Okay, motion to, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Sounds like it's getting ready, I'm getting ready for a break.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, let's get through Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is, we need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Motion second, to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. The next item I have is a request to approve and authorize the chair to sign the contract with Roger Grace for the purchase of 55 acres for use by the Walton County Jail, Walton County Sheriff's Office / jail. This is the project that the Sheriff's Office asked us to look at, and we now have a contract. I need you to approve the contract.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any more comments from the commissioners? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item I have is a request to approve a resolution authorizing the expenditure of TDT funds for the purchase of beachfront property in Miramar Beach.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is a request to approve and authorize the chair to sign the closing documents for the purchase of that beachfront property in Miramar Beach, and the documents were attached to the agenda item.
So
Motion to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any other comments from the commissioners? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Commissioners, the next item is we're asking direction from you regarding an existing vending contract at the Miramar Beach property. If I understand it correctly, we can terminate that vending contract, or we can leave it in place and allow that vendor to have the exclusive right to vend on that property until such time as his contract terminates. His contract terminates in October, and I don't know if Jay's still in the audience, but in talking with Jay, he did not anticipate having the improvements on that property done until after October. So there won't be any what we'd call normal TDC public access at that property, but we just need your direction whether you want us to keep it in place or terminate it. It would provide some income of, I think last year it was, I forgot the number now, 35,000, something along those lines.
If I remember correctly, that was it. I mean, that's obviously up to the board, and we had talked earlier this year about possibly leasing out some of our beaches. So this might be an opportunity for us to try it where we're not, trying it out on one of our existing beach accesses. So anyway, obviously it's up to the board on how y'all want to move forward, but with the contract in place.
Essentially, the seller would assign the contract to the county.
From the closing date?
Yes.
And as I understand it, he has already got commitments for this season, and it would put a hardship on him. He's a single dad with 5 kids so it looked like a win situation for us because we'd be getting 35,000. So, but it's up to you.
It makes a good test case.
I agree.
So,
That a motion?
that's a motion.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience?
To allow the contract.
Yes, sir. Come on up.
The contract.
Allow the contract
Yeah. To go, yeah.
not beyond October.
Beyond,
Exactly.
correct.
Not want to amend it.
Dave Meadows, last name Meadows. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. 35,000.
And I said that number, and I honestly don't remember the
Yeah.
number.
What is the amount that the county will get? Because don't go into it thinking you're getting 35,000.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. In exchange, the vendor provides 25% of the gross sales to Amalfi Coast.
Correct. And from my knowledge, that property probably generates anywhere between $40,000 and $50,000. So you'd wind up maybe 25% of that. That's just my knowledge on that. And also,
And I shouldn't have said, okay, I just had that number
correct,
in my head for some reason.
Correct. And then the existing contract between the vendor and the previous owner, do some more research on that, just to seeing where that contract stands. From my understanding, there was some issues with that contract. So if we're going to go ahead and allow a vendor to have exclusive rights there, then let's go ahead and do the open thing bidding process for the other vendors, or go ahead and continue what we're doing everywhere else and have a vendor zone to where it's open to the permitted vendors to come down there. He can still operate down there, and he can still get all the business that he's had before, that he already has its commitments and so forth. They'll still come to him. He'll still generate money, but open it up for the other vendors.
Council, with this piece of property here, with that particular contract in place, would he then have to fall upon our regulation, only 50% of that beach could be used?
No,
if he's using the whole
no,
thing? He's got the whole thing?
That's correct. It was private. That's correct.
So they're going to pay us 25% of the gross sales from March 1st through October 31st, no matter,
Yes.
even though the closing date is...
Yes, and the contract further says the payments will be made of $10,000 on or before 25 March, $10,000, which we wouldn't get, obviously, because we wouldn't own the property, but $10,000 on or before May 29th, and the remainder on or before November 15th.
And I think the only reason that I would consider this is that they've been doing this for years. The condos across the street have always contracted with this person. So I understand, because we're not gonna be present on that property this summer, to allow these people to still, use this man seems logical at this point.
But we will own the beach before this contract is out. And
Yes,
that's
sir.
my concern, and you can ease my concern. Are we going to break any rules or laws by not bidding it out?
No, sir, because you can take ownership of the property and accept the contract that exists on the property at the time.
Okay.
There's no bid required.
Yeah, and they already owe us 3 months.
Yeah, and the
That's how we do
emails
it
that I
globally.
have received is that Loggerhead has done a great job, and they've asked me to consider keeping them through this season anyway. So, do we have a motion?
Did I make a motion?
I don't think you
I think
did.
Yeah, I think we did.
I think we said the dates, though. Clarify with the dates.
Yeah, well, let's clarify by the end of the contract, what was it, October?
That's right. Well, March 1st
To.
through October 31st.
October 31st.
Yeah, October 31st.
That's in my motion, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion second. Any other comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Nielsen.
This example, Mary Nielsen, Nielson, this example brings to mind the fact that the condominiums here who have beach services are all getting reimbursed. Most of them are getting a very handsome reimbursement, some more than others, from the vendor that they choose to contract with for the purpose of servicing their guests and whoever is allowed on that beach. Now that you're becoming the owner, it brings to mind the issue of how we are providing vendors with a free office on all the other county-owned beaches, and what are we getting in return for that privilege of a free office? It is very well known in the condominium market that these condominiums are really realizing a lot of money in return from the vendors. And I think it behooves us that this philosophy of that they're willing to pay back money is important, because the taxpayers are providing them with a free office and to make all this money. And if they can pay all the condos back, how about paying us back? Thank you.
Good point. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners.
One nay. 4-1.
The next item is number 38. It's a request to set a public hearing on May 23rd for the purpose of considering an ordinance regulating medical marijuana dispensing centers in Walton County. And all we're doing today is asking you to set the public hearing on May 23rd. And of course, if you have comments on the proposed ordinance between now and then, to make them to our office.
All right, how is this going to affect what the state couldn't do this session?
Well, it's interesting. I had a long conversation on the telephone yesterday and today about that. The state took no action.
That's right.
Essentially, the Department of Health will issue rules at some point. There were all sorts of bills that got filed, amendments to those bills, one of which was to limit the number of dispensaries to 100 in the whole state. That has failed, not growers, dispensaries. Obviously, all that failed. So my suggestion would be, since we have no rules, that you do need a local ordinance, however you choose to do it. But we will, obviously, when the state Department of Health comes down and issues rules, we may have to amend whatever ordinance you pass to comply with those rules. But
Mark, didn't we take action a couple of weeks ago concerning we would only authorize 2 dispensaries in the
you
county?
authorized me to draft an ordinance.
Draft an ordinance,
which is what
okay.
this ordinance does, yes, sir. And there were some other things you asked for in the ordinance, and I believe with all my heart I got them all in there.
And then you added the process of how.
I stole one from, I stole 1.5 from a county and another county on how they score the folks who would apply. This ordinance lets the county administrator set up a committee that would meet in the sunshine to receive the applications, score them, and make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners.
I wouldn't use the word stole. I think reappropriation is a much
I-
better word.
I'm just trying to give credit where credit's due.
Okay, so do we have a motion to set a public hearing on May the 23rd?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Commissioners, the next item is to request to approve advertising staff workshops regarding the half-cent transportation and sales tax. The purpose of this would allow finance, public works, legal, all to get in the same room at a publicly advertised workshop and discuss the half-cent sales tax and what we would recommend you use it for is what it would boil down to. So we would ask you to authorize advertising at least 2 staff workshops.
Motion to approve.
15 minutes
Second.
here.
Yep, right here.
Okay. Sorry. Some housekeeping.
Got a motion.
A second.
Motion and second.
Yeah.
Staff workshops.
Any other comments on the half-cent workshop? Any comments from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
How soon can we get those done, y'all? I mean, I'd really like to start moving on this.
Soon.
My name is Rose Gainey, Gainey, and I'm just coming forward to say that I actually did vote for the half-cent sales tax to put in the bridge because a toll bridge of $8 was just too much to pay for my son to go down to South Walton to find a job because I live in North Walton. And I have to tell you that the bridge is awesomely beautiful. Y'all picked a great plan. I love Pilcher Park. It's very nice. I'm very happy. We took that money and we went with the half-cent sales tax and we had that bridge built, and it turned out that he didn't have to pay $8, which is an hour of minimum wage, to go back and forth across the bridge. So I wanted to say that worked out really well. I'm glad the county commissioners listened and we didn't turn that into a toll bridge. But I think a half-cent sales tax is for maintenance. That's an ongoing thing. The half-cent sales tax was a one-time big project, and now people are looking at that as a money income source. And I just don't think that we need this half-cent sales tax. And I think that having all these workshops it's going to be voted down, is my opinion. And I think it's just a waste of time and money. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. The only comment I would make, and the reason I want to see the workshop is I want to know how many shovel-ready projects we have. I want an idea of how many roads that we would commit to doing, how many, if we had $5 million and we don't have the roads ready, we don't have the accesses, we don't have the right-of-way. So that's the reason I want to do the workshop, is so that Public Works can give me an idea of how many roads are shovel-ready, and then to get an idea of how long we would want to do the half-cent sales tax and when a commitment of when we would sunset it. So do we want to have 2 workshops? Do we want to have 1 workshop?
I think we should have 2.
Motion 2. Okay, I'm sorry, I was tuned out. So we have a motion for 2 workshops. All right, so do we need to do dates too now?
These are
Staff workshops. Never mind, staff workshops. Okay. All right. So motion and a second, all in favor?
Wait a minute, Mr. Hudson.
Yes, Mr. Hudson. I'm sorry, I probably totally confused it.
For the record, my name is Bob Hudson, Hudson. Maybe you can help me understand, Commissioner
Jones.
Jones, sorry. Had an MRI today and it rattled my brain a little bit. When you say workshops, are you talking public workshops?
Yes.
Because I stood before this board and said, well, you really ought to look at something like this, but there were some conditions that were with that, some caveats that were there. And I just want to make sure that we're going to have an opportunity to explore those things. Mm-hmm. Second question that I have is this money additive? In other words, you currently transfer about $8 million out of the landfill fund that goes for road and bridge projects. And everybody says we've got all these backlogs and things of that nature. Are you still planning to transfer the $8 million, and so anything we get from a half-cent sales tax is additive to that, to where we truly can address? Or someone said, well, we can use that $8 million for other things. Well, if you're getting 8, and if a half cent gets you 10, that's not much additive speed up.
And that's why I want to have the staff workshops, so that we can spell out exactly what we would be asking the voters to vote for. This many projects at this amount of money, And of course, let us know what's ready to,
Well-
that.
I've been amazed how in industry or business, how rapidly projects can get started. I've been amazed at how sometimes slow that is in government and everything. So I would be really interested in seeing what you could, because my vision is people riding by a sign that says this was paid for with half-cent sales tax.
Right.
Because if people can see, they see that bridge, but if it's something that's buried in the ground that they don't see, it's going to, in my opinion, have a tough road when it comes to a referendum.
And a project that I would like to see the money used for, if we vote to do this, would be the connector road, 30A. Get some traffic off through the connector road that hopefully we've decided on, that skirts development and skirts
Well, that
the
seems to
forest.
be a long-term project.
Well, I want it to be a short term.
Because the 395 intersection has now been, I think, 10 years.
Right, I agree. So I want to fast forward this, really.
I just want to make sure we've got some out there that when, if that came to a referendum and the people of Walton County decided to do that, that there would be something within a year that you could point to and say, this is what you have. And my time's up.
But Mark, aren't I correct? I mean, and you're right about the sign. When I met with Grover Robinson in Pensacola, he said it's a no-brainer. You put a sign up here saying, hey, we could use a half-cent sales tax to pave this road, and then once it's done, put another sign that says we did it, you know?
Right.
People can see that.
Correct.
It's tangible to them. But I don't think we can list in the referendum the roads. We can only say, now we can discuss them in a workshop, but
You
we
can
can't
discuss them in a
list
workshop, you can publish whatever you, or have.
And we plan
Mark,
on doing it.
And I clearly understand what the requirements for the referendum language are, but it would be my hope, and I believe you can say, these are the things in workshops and everything that we plan to do with those dollars.
Yes, very much so.
And there will probably be people that will be in favor and will help you do the heavy lifting in terms of promoting, and there'll probably be some people that will be what? Against.
We had those in the bridge project too, if I can remember correctly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought this is a no-boner. Everybody's going to love this project. Everybody's going to love a bridge, but I found out real quick that no, it was not that case. But now, I think everybody sees it was a success.
Well, I think a lot of people did see that that was a well-done project that had a defined entity, a defined end date. I rode across it 2 times today, and everything. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson, as always.
Lee Moore wants to talk to you.
Okay, yes, sir, come on.
Alan Vaquero. I'd just like to get a clarification, because what I printed out from the website on this and what's been passed out at the front desk is a slight difference. And with that, what you passed out on the agenda here, you're calling it advertising a staff workshop, whereas what you have sent out through the email is just an ordinance regarding a half-cent transportation sales tax. What do you mean by staff workshop? Does that mean just the staff members get together and discuss what should be in this referendum, or is this something where the public actually participates in?
As I said earlier, it would be a publicly advertised staff workshops, and I'm asking for 2, that we would have Public Works, Finance, Legal involved to come up with, to answer and discuss amongst ourselves, and of course with public input, projects that would need to be covered under half-cent sales tax, legal issues, and finance issues.
And whether or not there is a list of items that would be, and a ranking of items that would be on the list to be funded by it?
That's why Public Works would be there, and that's why we'd need input from the public.
So it is open to the public discussion?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lee?
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity. I just want to echo what Mr. Hudson said briefly, that I agree that it would be in the taxpayer's best interest if you included the road and bridge excess funds from the landfill enterprise fund in the analysis so that everybody knows really, exactly what they're voting for. I think it might help support it or whatever, but it'll get it all out there and people will know exactly what's planned. I think that would be the best way to do it.
Thank you for those comments. Any others? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, we would have 2 staff workshops. That's the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item is request to approve or disapprove the proposed settlement agreement in the Yellow House 38 LLC versus Walton County. Commissioners, as you may recall, we had an executive session on this particular lawsuit where we considered a proposal from settlement from the attorneys for the Yellow House. You rejected that proposal and authorized us to make a particular counteroffer, which we've done. That they have accepted that counteroffer contingent upon your vote, obviously, and that counteroffer is attached in the board packet. Let me just be clear. What we were asking the commission to do is approve an agreement that the planning department and the commission would consider the land use change. You can't agree to do it in a settlement agreement. You would have to go through the regular process or authorize the planning department to go through the regular process. There's 2 small changes I need to point out. On page 2 of 9 of the agreement, we asked and they've agreed to change the process time in paragraph 2A. It says the county will process and consider a county-initiated small-scale plan amendment to the county's flume within 45 days. We've asked that to be changed to 90. Quite frankly, I'm leaving. There's some changes going on. We just need more time if that's going to be done. And they've agreed to that change. And then paragraph B says within 7 days of the effective date, the parties will file a motion in the litigation requesting that the court hold the case in abeyance. And we've asked that to be changed from 90 days to 120 days to give us essentially 4 months to complete the process. So those are the only 2 changes, and we'd ask you to either approve or disapprove the agreement as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion and second. Any other comments, questions? Comments from the audience?
I do have a comment. And I did a little bit of homework on this one. In September 2010, the board denied it going from residential preservation to neighborhood commercial. And the comments then were because of the parking problem. And we're here in 2017 asking for the same change. Right, Mark?
Yes, ma'am.
And nothing has changed. The one thing that concerns me is residential preservation is 1 dwelling or 1 home per acre with an accessory dwelling. Neighborhood commercial at 1 acre, this is 0.997, is going to be 3 homes per acre. Even though there's an agreement out there, that's another 3 homes and 3 dwellings. So if this goes up to 1 acre, we've got the chance of 4 homes and 4 motherhood cottages, and nothing has changed. There's no more parking. The parking is down the road for the Yellow House on 2 roads. This parcel was bought in June of 2015 as residential preservation at $3.55 million. The owner knew what was going on.
Is this the yogurt shop, the ice cream shop?
Yes. They blew down.
Right. So I think if we agree to go from,
well, I'm not meaning to cut you off, and everything you just said is absolutely true, but this is not to approve the flume change. This is just to authorize staff to ask you to approve the flume change. It just authorizes us to go through, authorizes the Planning Commission to go through the process, just like any other land use change. It would come to you for a vote at a later time, and then all those issues could be considered.
Right, so we're voting tonight to approve or disapprove the settlement agreement.
Right.
And the settlement agreement is saying that we could?
You could, or you could, if you disapprove it, we just put the lawsuit back into place. There would be a 120-day abeyance for you to consider the change. Mm-hmm. If you don't approve it, the lawsuit just goes forward.
I'm sorry, I got myself confused there for
That's
a second.
okay.
But the parking issue is not, I'm sorry, the parking issue has not changed for the Yellow House.
And that would certainly be something, frankly, I would encourage you to discuss when the flume change comes to fruition.
All right, so what is the,
so what's
motion to approve the settlement offer?
Okay, we have a motion to approve the settlement offer. Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
Okay, you already seconded. Okay, any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir, come on up. And we'll take a break right after this, y'all.
I'm a little confused here. I'd like to get a little more explanation. From what you're talking about,
Sir, I am so sorry. The Yellow House has been a parking issue since 2010. I apologize. After that, I was speaking on something else.
okay, so what, the Yellow House is not part of number 47 on the agenda?
47?
No, it's 40, sir. I'm so sorry.
Number 40, and we're talking
Yeah,
about.
I know, number 40 is Yellow House.
Yeah.
But what Melanie was saying, it led me to believe that she was talking about 47, and I thought maybe the two were related.
No.
I made a mistake.
Oh.
I'm very sorry.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
Okay.
Somehow I combined them both in my mind. I'm sorry.
Thank you for paying attention.
It's like my $35,000. It was just
Okay. Okay, so we have any other comments from the audience? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign, and we'll take a 20-minute break.
Nay. You have two nays.
Call the meeting back to order, please. Commissioner Tony Anderson?
Yes, I have a couple of things. First of all, request to obligate $40,000 in the District 5 recreational plat fees to help pay for the lights at the South Walden Boys and Girls Club fields that we are leasing for the next 25 years. It's really needed to ensure more space for our children and grandchildren. I believe Commissioner Jones, you stated at the last meeting that for the first time South Walden Little League had to turn kids away. There's problems with soccer field management, and this will help in that. So I'd just like to make a motion to obligate that money.
Okay, have a motion?
Second.
Motion second. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Yes, sir, Mr. Hudson?
Mr. Anderson, Bob Hudson, HUDSON. Last time you got 358, I believe it was, from TIF funds. Now 40, so that's about 398,000 for the lights there. And I'm correct, there was something about a contract that says if we leave, there's some payback for those. Right. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. You just said 5 years.
25 years.
Okay, I said, boy, that's a well of a payment if we leave.
Uh-huh. It's actually 30 years.
Okay, 30 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Corrected.
Okay, we have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Next, I would like to request direction for staff to create a multi-use pass master plan. We're trying to get more bike paths and walking paths through South Walden, and by having a multi-use plan, if I understand it right from our engineers and our environmental people, we will be eligible for more grants that we could get to help take up that. So this is just a request and a motion to instruct them to start on that project.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second if we need it, if you just provide direction.
Direction. We don't have to have a motion and a second. Okay.
There's a couple out there.
All right. Yes, ma'am, come on up. This is just direction.
Mary Nielsen, I'm a resident of your district, Mr. Anderson, and anything to help facilitate the very, very needed and necessary path from 98 South to Ridge Road would be most appreciated. I know it was voted upon earlier before your term started, and I'd like to know if you know what the status of that was. because we've already had a death there, and it's very, very dark at night, and it's narrow, and that is a scary stretch of road. And do you know what the status of that is?
I don't know what the status is.
And the other thing is that supposedly, at the time that was all discussed before, there was discussion that FDOT was going to agree possibly to a left turn signal when you're coming north on South 393 to exit onto 98 going west, that we were going to get a left turn signal there because of the danger in that situation. And I wondered if you could find that out for us too and let us all know that.
I talked with our traffic engineer, Chance Powell, yesterday.
Okay.
And he said that as far as he knew, that was still in the process. He didn't have an update
But
for
he
me.
didn't have a date.
He
yet.
didn't have a date
Okay.
for me.
We just need that bike path really.
Yeah, and this is for the whole south
Right,
end.
right.
And I agree with you. We do need that.
That's a
right
scary
there.
stretch. Thank you.
Cliff, you could come and speak to one of the issues, I know, please. Maybe the 98 to Bridge Road, is that the one?
Yes, ma'am. Cliff Nauer, KNA, UER, Dewberry, Preble, Rish. The design is completed from Ridge Road to Highway 98. The state has already issued all our permits. That would be the Northwest Florida Water Management District. We've also got our DOT approvals for the portion of it that's within the DOT right-of-way, just south of Highway 98. We're currently waiting on Army Corps permits. And so we've had our state permits for several months. And so we're pushing to get our Army Corps permits. Once we get those in hand, it'll be ready to go.
Okay. All right, thank you. Lee?
Lee Moore, representing Howard Group, and you all are probably not surprised. You know how I am about master plans. Howard Group supports this. I know this is early in the process, but we support this initiative 150%. Think it's a great idea, and would hope that I'm sure it will be coordinated with whatever the TDC is putting out an RFP on for a more holistic transportation solution or whatever. But I think this would be something wonderful for all of Walton County and very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Yes, sir. Come on up, Mr. Banfield.
Tim Banfield, B-A-N-F-E-L-L, and on behalf of the Scenic Corridor Foundation, we certainly support this initiative and would love to see it move forward.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, I believe we have direction already given, so anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Sarah Commander?
Not a thing.
Okay. Miss Commissioner Melanie Gibber?
Okay. I have requested for staff to research a tree preservation ordinance. Ironically, the planning department is already doing this, and I'll tell you, it's for legacy trees. Those are our live oaks, our magnolias, and our longleaf pine of certain size. And I think we need to preserve it. It's something we don't have, and planning department's already on it.
Thank you very much for that. Vice Chair Bill Chapman?
The only, excuse me, the only thing I had is, you probably all got an email this week from a lady that was talking about the turn lane or the turning at 283 and 98. There is no turn lane signal there. So when it's green, you just sort of got to get across there the best way you can. Kind of like to get staff to look at, somebody get with DOT and see if that can be incorporated into that light we got up there. 283 and 98.
And I think Chance is already working on that, but I will follow up with him to make sure.
That's all I got.
Okay, under my name, first of all, happy birthday to Bill Chapman, Commissioner Bill Chapman. He's embarrassed, but that's okay.
Excuse me, he quoted my age the last time I had.
Go ahead and quote it, I don't care.
I think that should only be fair.
It's 49, so you get it right.
We had a wonderful FSU, Alabama cake.
That's right, Alabama cake.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I
And
got socks that old too, yeah.
we had a very interesting showdown, the last few days of the legislative session, so I'll ask Bill Williams if you'd come up and just give us a real brief, maybe talk about the BP funds that we're finally going to get.
That's the Chapman Doctrine. Real brief.
That's exactly right.
Bill Williams, the Restore Coordinator.
the Restore Coordinator. I think we're going to do it in two parts. I think the lobbyist will give you a kind of an overview generally, and I'll talk more specifically to the Restore Act. I've asked Rick to pass out, and I've got a copy for the clerk. Basically, this is a copy of the staff analysis and House Bill 7077 and House Bill 7079, which is the trust fund side. I won't belabor the points, but I think it's important for the public and for the commission to know. This bill that you're seeing was the engrossed language that was sent to the governor and agreed by on both the House and the Senate. There are significant changes in the delivery that was originally put together in 2013 and codified with the Gulf Coast Corridor Act. The primary change in the law, number one, the great news is to our county and to the Panhandle, is that these dollars will be coming forward in this session if the governor, and we think this is outside the scope of general appropriations, but depending on where that goes, and he's got the 14 days, but it has been sent and agreed upon. $299 million has been designated, or 75% of the first payment from BP that was paid in July. There was a $400 million payment. As you recall, this is an 18-year payout. The $300 million has, we've questioned a great deal of where those monies would go and would they make it to the Panhandle, giving Senator Negron, President Negron, and Speaker of the House Corcoran credit in the membership that Jay Trumbull and our senators did. Senator Gaynor, Senator Munford, and Senator Broxton all worked in hand. So I think it's real important that our public recognize they fought very valiantly to keep those monies into the Panhandle, and that has delivered. So Triumph will be the entity that oversees these funds. The original 5 members that we spoke of, Stan Conley from Gulf Power, Pam Dana with Innovation, Mobility or Movement over there, Bob Benezzi, Stephen Riggs, and former Speaker Bentz. The law is changing that to have 2 designees that will come on. And the way that statute was written is that it's from the 4 least populated counties of the 8 disproportionate counties, and we're one of them, so we're fighting very hard to make sure that we get an appointment onto the Triumph board, so there will be 7 board members. They have their first organizational meeting May 22nd at 10:30 at the Panama City FSU campus. That's certainly open to the public, and I'll bring that information back to you. The biggest issue and change, if you look on page 8 of this first section on the summary analysis from House and Senate staff, economic incentives to a direct corporation were removed, or any funds that would go into an economic development agency within a county were removed. But it gives us a lot of flexibility from my recommendation or viewpoint. It's a good bill for local government. Senator Gaynor fought very hard to protect 5% of these dollars across the 8 counties. So basically 40%, $140 million will be distributed among the 8 counties in that process. That doesn't mean that it would be designated to the county as a whole. There are about 7 or 8 eligible requirements or opportunities. And again, they haven't come together yet. There's codified language that tells us what has to be in the process for application, but that's not there. But we do have some general scopes of projects that are allowed. Infrastructure is certainly one of them. Tourism was also in there, both in its promotion and in some of its infrastructure. K through 20, and working with our school systems to create career source and development opportunities was there. So they gave us the tools to create the economic environment, the vitality to be able to work with our education levels, both K through 20 and then advance. We also have a lot of opportunity. There's ad valorem reduction that you can see. We can use these dollars for match grants. So we'll be working, and I would ask that all of you continue to ponder kind of an idea. One of the bills, the language that is in there, the cities and the school boards, and we've done that. Walton County has, in my mind, been basically a model. We've been working for the past year with our cities to look at 331 in the infrastructure. You all signed a memorandum of understanding. In this bill, it talks about the county will solicit in year 2 the 4%. So you'll get 5% for each county in the first rollout of the $300 million. Post that, the county will be kind of an air traffic controller, it's our responsibility to solicit opportunities from the cities, municipalities, the school boards, any elected governing bodies, and present those projects. So for the public's clarification and for you all, you're not in the decision-making chair of this. It will be that 7-person body, but they are to take priority your recommendations within that 5%. But again, there could be a research university and a bridge competing for that same 5%. So it's not just a county or municipality type scenario. If the governor moves forward and the bill's accepted, Triumph will then be organized and start going through. They were allocated $1 million to basically facilitate the organization. They'll have to go through that process. They're very strict with the way a lot of the audit general and the transparencies and requirements that are supposed to be there are within the bill. So with that, I'll pause and answer any questions, and I'll turn it to our state lobbyists.
Billy, the appointee from Walton County,
Yes.
who makes that decision?
Great question, Commissioner. That is not a local decision. That will be either the Speaker of the House or the Senate President has the authority to make those two appointments. So it is completely within their purview to decide who that is. The statute just said it had to be one of the 4 least populated counties, which was primarily designed by Senator Munford in making sure that where I'm from, Gulf County and Franklin and Wakulla had representation on that board, but we fit that profile, and we fought very hard to make sure that we get an appointment from Walton County.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So about how much will we get?
If you look just now, again, I'm giving you a minimum number of what the counties are guaranteed, which is the first 140 million of the 300 or 299 gets pulled off. That doesn't preclude us from competing for the additional, but looking at the disbursement in this first funding, you're looking at about 14.9 million that will be allocated. And again, this is really, really important as we look at the resilience and the recovery of the oil spill. These are non-taxpayer dollars that will be able to assist at your direction. And one of the things I was speaking of earlier, because of the way the framework of the bill outlines that we need to work with our cities and our school boards, and again, we've done that. We're way down. We've got conceptual plans. We're working with them. But we will need you to think about how you'd like that to be structured so that we can have public outreach, education, and work with our other bodies of government.
Okay. Any questions from the audience for Bill, Mr. Williams? None?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have a question, Billy. The appointments for the 2 new members, it's supposed to go to the
Senate President and Speaker of the
4
House.
smallest county. Shouldn't that be a resident of those counties?
It doesn't specifically say that. It basically gives the profile of the county, not the profile of the individual.
So we could have somebody from Jacksonville.
Theoretically, you
speaking for
could, but I
Walton
think that they have honored, the leadership has honored the intent of keeping this within the Panhandle. I would assume that a resident of one of those 3 on the eastern flank in this county has a strong opportunity to do that.
Okay.
So, but it doesn't say that specifically, but I feel that they understand that this was a Panhandle hit, a Panhandle recovery, and should be decided by Panhandle people. I did want to mention real quick, if I can, Madam Chair, May 17th, and we'll make sure that this gets up on the website, the Regional Planning Council of both the Appalachia Regional Planning Council and the West Florida Region Planning Council will have a meeting from 5:30 to 7 at the Destin Commons Government Center there in Destin. This is in basic response to having the cities and the school boards come together. They're helping basically organize that. And if you look at the TPOs and MPOs and things, that they'll be a great partner for us because we'll need to be able to utilize those dollars as we come through. On May 20th and 21st, we've got a meeting with Treasury, which relates back to our $5.7 million and clearing off that multi-year implementation plan of the 17 projects that you selected. We feel pretty confident that Treasury I know that when we met, Commissioner Nipper and Commissioner Anderson and I met with them in Washington, and they were very open to getting that closed out. The second part of that meeting, which, that's why we've advertised for the public, because one or two or more of you may be there, but is to plan the $31 million that's remaining. And what's really critical is with the $14.9 million and the $31 million you have, that we master plan that to the vision that you all have with the county. So that's the reason for that meeting. And then, as I mentioned, May 22nd at 10:30 is the Triumph bill in Panama City FSU campus.
Did you say the 20th and the 21st?
It's a Saturday. It's a Saturday and Sunday. It's not a typo. It is a Saturday and Sunday. Additionally, in the packet that I gave you was the first part that the House did. That's the final bill analysis. There was also the first and gross bill. On the back side of that, and we'll make sure that's available, but for the public purpose, it's on the Florida Association of Counties website. There's a nice synopsis of the county impacts statewide. That may not be what you voted on as a board, but the legislative priorities for the Association of Counties as a whole, and there's bill numbers and who sponsored and things of that nature, if the public would like to see that as well.
Can you speak just real quick to the customary use scare we had? How it ended up being resolved?
Yes, ma'am, and probably the lobbies would be better than I am on that. But the scenario is that basically Katie Edwards, House member, introduced an amendment to a comprehensive land use bill that would have preempted local government. There was a very large move in Tallahassee this year to preempt local government and violating basically home rule and some of the things that are there. That got traction in the House. It went through final committee and was sent to the Senate. Senator Pasadena, who is a senator from Naples, and the chair of the Judicial Committee, refused to pick that up. It bounced back and forth between the House and Senate. It came very close to being looked at in the process. But as they ran out of time, that bill died because it was being bounced back and forth between the House and the Senate.
Well, the original amendment to that bill filed by that lady was at midnight on a Saturday night, was it not?
Yes, sir. And we've all met, this team, and I applaud the commissioners. We met, the lobbying team. We met with the chair on the House side. And one of the issues that we brought up was that with transparency, this was exactly what you said. It was brought up in the fourth quarter. It had not been heard within the different committees. It did not have the three, at that time, the different hearings and the readings that was necessary. And you're seeing a lot of that within the news cycle now between the budget and how they negotiated, et cetera, from a transparency standpoint. But yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, citizen request. William Mesner. Yes, come up.
Brian Kellenberger, Director of Beach Operations. I spoke with Mr. Mesner before the meeting started, and he had to leave early, so I explained that I would get up and speak to this item. So where we left this is we had talked with DEP about bathrooms at Graton Beach from a previous citizen request. They had some vendor complaints against us and asked that we clear those up first. 2015, we created vendor zones. That stopped part of the problem. The next part was driving on the beach by vendors. This year, we changed that rule. So at this point, I think if we want to move forward on this, we need direction and approval to start some conceptual design, as well as meet with members of that community, and also start the amendment to the land management plan associated with that leased property.
Okay. So do we want to do that right now? So what's your pleasure, board? Do you have questions?
I'll make a motion that we start the process. And that doesn't mean that we're deciding to do it or anything, but we've got to start somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it'll be a long process. Like I say, we have initial conversations with FDEP and the agency of state of Florida that is the administrator of that land. And so their request is that amend the land management plan to include restrooms, because right now it does not include that. Part of that process, they would like to see some conceptual plan, And I think that as courtesy to the people in that community, we ought to involve some of the stakeholders in discussion of it. And then once we get a conceptual plan, that would be a conceptual location as well as a conceptual building plan, have a public workshop. So it'll take about $7,500 probably to get conceptual plans and land management plan amended or the process started. So that's what we would need approval on tonight.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for everybody on the board's knowledge, I still retain my aide. I think she was gonna quit if I didn't make that motion. So.
We'll find a place in the north.
But they're needed in bathrooms in Grayton.
Okay.
It's just, I want to make sure that it's, the design and all is, you know, in accordance to what is in Grayton.
Okay. Now's the time for other public comments. These comments can be anything. Ms. Nielsen, you're anxious to come up.
Mary Nielsen, this is a quick question that maybe Brian Kellenberger or all of you can answer. Has the contract for the maintenance of the right-of-ways on Scenic 30A and 98 been lapsed, and has a new request gone out for bids for that contract? Because that's a really important contract that we have, and I can't imagine how it could lapse. So I need an answer to that, because they did do a pretty good job, and you could tell the improvements once that program was implemented. So that's my question. What do you know?
Brian's got the answer.
Hi.
Brian Kellenberger, for the record. Yes, the contract did lapse, and we knew it was going to lapse. We started the procurement process back in January, we, TDC, for the multi-use path maintenance contract. It was set to expire on April 14th of this year. Early February, Public Works approached us about the opposite side of the road from the multi-use path with a idea of piggybacking on our RFP for that contract in order to gain economy of scale for those services. So we discussed what documents would need to be generated, and at that point we realized that it might put us in a slight deficiency of getting it done on time. We didn't realize it was going to be 6 weeks. We thought it'd be about 4 weeks. But anyway, RFP for that contract was sent out. We have closed that RFP. We have the proposals in hand. We're reviewing them. We're scheduled to turn that back in on the 11th. We will set a meeting shortly after that for the panel to make a recommendation, and we're prepared to come back to you on the 23rd with a recommendation for that award, and we expect that contractor will be able to start immediately. Since we realized we were going to have a deficit or a deficiency in it, we allocated resources within my department to do just basic grass cutting and trash pickup on the multi-use path. So, to answer your question, yes, the contract did lapse. We have reallocated resources to cover that deficiency, and we expect to have that contract in place before the end of this month.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, did I see another hand? Yeah, Mr. Hudson? Sure.
The prices we have in, actually, we realized about a 22% decrease in the cost from what it was for the last 3 years. So
Great.
It was actually, a good, we've been struggling with what to do with the other side of the road. We as TDC, have not been approved to fund that. Public Works has been, trying to find ways to do it, and all things came together. Lost a little bit of time, but in the end, we saved the county about $62,000.
Yeah, we like to hear that. Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
For the record, my name is Bob Hudson, Hudson. 16 years ago, I came to Walton County from Dallas, Texas. One of the first people I met was Mr. Mark Davis. And if I'm correct, tonight is Mark's last Board of County Commissioners meeting for Walton County. I want you to know that when I met Mark for the first time, he was on the school board. And I served on the school board and have a great deal of respect for those who do that. When he stepped down from the school board, I came up there and said thank you to Mark Davis for his service to Walton County for the education of children here. I probably made the second most number of public record requests in Walton County.
I'm not going to ask you who the first was.
I'm not even going there, but probably number 2. But since Mark came in to serve as the county's attorney, under your direction, I'm sure some policies and procedures were set into place that have sure made the tracking and responsiveness to public records requests tremendously better than they were in the past. I don't think you've been sued over public records requests under Mark. But Mark, it's been a joy. Welcome to the beach. Get you some sunglasses, get you some suntan oil, because you're going to need them. But personally, Mark, I want to thank you. It's always been a joy. Mark and I don't always agree on everything, and I don't always agree with myself at times. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mark and what he's done for this county. And when y'all made that selection, y'all made a good one, and I can understand his departure. But Mark, happy sales, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, come on up.
Thank you, Commissioners. Lee Moore, representing Howard Group again. I failed to say earlier, I wanted to thank Commissioner Anderson for bringing up the multi-use path master plan. Thank you. And I also now want to thank Commissioner Nipper and the Planning Department for working on suggesting the tree preservation ordinance. We just feel like trees are sometimes an overlooked natural asset because we have such amazing natural assets here in the beach and the lakes and the bay and everything else, but even in, not just in our state forests and county parks and state parks, but in developed areas, both commercial and residential, they are a very, very important natural asset, and when they're gone, that's when people tend to realize that. So I commend you all, you staff, for looking into this, and I don't know if we can be of any help, but if we can, going forward, let us know. Big supporters of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Come on.
My name is Rose Gainey, Gainey, and the reason is I'm here tonight is I wanted to bring your attention to the fact that Walton County is getting ready to sell a 3-foot path off of Blue Water Beach Road that goes all the way from Blue Water Beach to the actual beach. And I'm thinking I was told that TDC was the one that gave y'all the recommendation that it wasn't worth anything. Well, I went out and looked at it yesterday and took some pictures, and they were saying, well, you know, it's not worth anything. It's only 3 feet wide. But I'm like, hey, this is a path that goes directly to the beach. And then I was told, well, there's a cement wall on one side. That's the homeowners, which okay. And then they said there's a cliff there's a cliff at the end, so you actually can't, even though it's a publicly owned, you can't actually have access from the beach. And I went and looked at that. There's this giant metal, I guess it's a seawall structure, which if it's on public land, I assume that would mean y'all gave permission or y'all put the wall up, but it also spans to the left and the right parallel to the beach. So it brought up the question is this seawall there legally or illegally? And if this is county land, why can't I have access to it? And then, while I was at the beach taking some pictures, some lady from from the west side of that came out and yelled and screamed at me and told me that I couldn't be on the beach, that I had to be, near the water. So obviously, there's a lot of issues here, I guess, researching it. The seawall, the access. But I don't see why I'm listening to y'all here today and we're paying $3 million, $6 million, $9 million for beach access. Now, I'm from the North County and I voted for that bridge and I want to go to the beach. And since we've had TDC become so active, they've done some wonderful things and some terrible things. And I guess the biggest thing is when you guys have all these people come and all these developers come and they end up bringing all these tourists. Well, now when we go to the beach as people in the north end of the county, all of the parking spaces are filled. And all of the state parks, they say, we'll go to the state parks, and all the state parks are filled. So where do the people that are in the north of the end of the county go to the beach at? So here we got this access that the county owns, and they're looking at, by the end of this month, they're taking sealed bids for this place, this little 3-foot path. And I looked on the beach, and there were all these signs, and all these signs said, you can't come over here, you can't come over here, beach, this is private property. And I would hate to see, here it is, another, this beach access that the county owns, and I would hate to see that say, yeah, we're going to sell it. Somebody puts a 2.5 foot, 3-foot pathway, privately owned, and they put up a fence and a gate, and it says, no, public can't be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And staff, could you get with Ms. Gainey and let her know about the seawall? That I believe we can get an answer for. Thank you. Yeah, you know the answer now? Brian?
No, ma'am, I don't know the answer now, but I'd like to address comments.
Okay.
If I may.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 feet wide. Our standard design on our handrails is approximately 8 inches. That'd be 16 inches total. Subtract that from 36 inches, that's 20-inch wide boardwalk we'd be able to build over that dune and that seawall. It's simply not an access that is feasible for us to use as a public beach access. 3 feet wide down to the main high water line. All right. The seawall, I'm assuming, was built after Hurricane Dennis when the rest of them were built. We all know the approval processes on that. I'm assuming that somewhere in the files there is a approval by Walton County. If we did own that land at the time, I'm not sure when we actually gained that land. Apparently it was given to us as part of a development order for adjacent property. Anyway, just wanted to comment on the comments that were made.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brian. Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, let's move on to planning and development. Mac?
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. First item on our agenda tonight, item number 45, we have a request to reappoint or replace 3 members of the Design Review Board whose terms expired, I believe, on April 22nd. Those 3 members are David Bailey, Tom Waldrop, and Lee Moore. Each of those 3 have indicated a willingness to serve if it would be the pleasure of this board.
Okay.
Well,
do I have a motion?
Motion to reappoint.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? Have a motion and second. Any other comments?
I'm sorry, can you announce what those positions are in terms of which, if you know, which?
David Bailey sits in the architect seat as a design professional. Tom Waldrop, I believe, is an effective property owner, as is Lee Moore.
Okay. And Commissioners, with these appointments, we will still have 1 vacancy that we need to get filled, so I just want to remind planning staff of that.
Do you know what category that we need one in?
Do you remember?
It was Bradford Davis, and he was a design professional, but we switched David to that seat, so I'm not sure which seat is still vacant.
Yeah, I would have to double check that.
I believe planning brought this to you guys a couple of months ago, but we haven't had any applicants for the position.
So we're looking for help?
We addressed our quorum problem where we have to have 2 design professionals seated on that board for every meeting. So that got taken care of, and that's addressed our immediate problem of not being able to seat a quorum on a regular basis. But I'll confirm which seat is available and let admin know so we can begin the process of filling that seat.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. That brings us to item 46. This is a request to approve and authorize the chairwoman to sign contract number 017-014 for Habitat for Humanity as the consultant to act as the replacement housing strategy sponsor for the SHIP program within Walton County in cooperation with the West Florida Regional Planning Council. This particular contract is really an administration contract that allows Habitat to provide the housing and use our replacement housing strategy as one of the funding mechanisms for that. They don't get paid to administer this strategy. They work with the Regional Planning Council to implement this strategy, but they get to use the money, which is the important part for them. And our SHIP administration contract requires us to solicit a subcontractor for this particular strategy. This is the incumbent contractor. We put out an invitation or a request for interest. This was the only entity that made a submittal. We've had good success in the past 3 years with them, and this contract would be consistent, or the term would be consistent with our 3-year housing assistance plan.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
That brings us to our quasi-judicial
Sure,
section.
anyone who anticipates speaking before the board or testifying before the board on any item on the quasi-judicial docket, would you please stand and raise your right hands? Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. When you come to the podium, if you would, say your name, spell your last name, and tell us that you have been sworn. Commissioners, have you received any ex parte contacts regarding any item on the quasi-judicial docket?
No.
If you have you turned them in?
Yes.
The first one we told you was not. It actually is. So if you have something on the Lavin, you'll need to turn it in.
Okay.
So you can turn it in at a later date. So with that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you. Item number 1 under our QJ section, this is the Thomas Lavin Small Scale Amendment. This was continued from the April 11th BCC meeting. This is a small scale amendment application requesting to amend the future land use designation of the affected parcel from residential preservation to low density residential on approximately 0.95 acres. This is also a beachfront parcel. It's located approximately 250 feet east of Seacrest Drive on the south side of County Road 38. This land use category that is being proposed allows up to 4 units per acre. This particular development site is less than 1 acre, so it would only be entitled to 3 units or 3 lots under the present category. The applicant, in discussion with the board at the last meeting, agreed to limit that density to 2 lots instead of 3 as a condition of approval. We have a developer agreement that has been returned and executed that would support that condition.
And Commissioners, I have one small change to the developer's agreement. I frankly thought I'd made it before today, but I apparently did not. In the first paragraph, it should say, this agreement is made and entered into by and between Walton County and Thomas and Susan Lavin, their successors and ex-signs. I just want to make sure that it runs with the land. I don't think that's will be a problem with the developer, but I thought I'd made the change earlier, but apparently I have not. But I have no objections to the remainder of the agreement.
This proposed application or proposed land use change was reviewed by Christine Sammelman, and we'd like to request that the staff report be entered into evidence at this time.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
I was shaking my head. Yes.
And the applicant is here to further describe their request.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Carpenter before he leaves? Okay, Mr. Shipman.
Good evening. Gary Shipman, law firm Dunlap and Shipman. I represent the Lavins. I just wanted to point out that as part of the staff report, all the submittals that we've done, including the compatibility analysis, environmental analysis, are all included with the staff report, so we're not trying to separately move it in at this time in the evidence. We would like to point out that This parcel is basically what we've applied for with the developer's agreement is simply a lot split. We're taking a 1 acre lot and having 2 half-acre lots. If you look at the compatibility analysis of the area, there is the subdivision across the street is 7 units per acre. Immediately next door is a 20-unit condominium that was developed at 12 units per acre. All the individual beachfront lots heading to the west are half-acre lots. So what we are doing is consistent with all of the surrounding area. There was comments when this was brought up before about there is an easement down the side of one lot, a 6-foot wide easement, that is a private easement for the benefit of Mrs. Dawkins and her heirs or assigns and no one else. It's not a public easement. The lots will be 52 feet wide, which is consistent with all the other lots in the area. There was a comment about the traffic. You could build a much larger house on 1 acre than you can on half an acre. Based on our review, there would be no traffic impact, and I would point out that this particular piece of property was actually on the TDC's list to buy and build a regional beach access, which would have created a whole lot more traffic than 2 private homes on half-acre lots. We have with us the engineer and Melissa Ward, who's with my firm, does planning consulting work if there are any questions.
You don't have any objections to that change to the development?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
And I didn't even catch it, Mark, until you said that.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Shipman or Ms. Ward?
I do. To go from residential preservation to low-density residential, this one, the agreement's going to be for 2, because if it bumps up to 1 acre, you're allowed 4 homes. Is that correct?
But we have limited in the development agreement that no more than 2 units.
All right. And then the accessory dwellings, what are allowed on there?
So I don't want to misstate it, so I'm having my planner come up here and say it.
For the record, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Shipman. It's a good question. Accessory dwellings or accessory units cannot exceed 800 square feet of heated and cooled area. They can be an apartment over a parking garage for the 2 cars or whatever, but they're typically just an 800 square foot unit, like a grandmother or a mother-in-law suite.
Any more questions? Questions from the audience? Any comments? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
I think that there's a good chance that they're going to rent out these units, so now you'll be back to 4 people. You know, you'll have 4 units, because it's easy to rent 800 square foot to help, supplement, and now you're back to 4. So I think maybe they shouldn't get the supplementals.
Any other comments, Mr.?
Madam Chairman, Clay Atkinson of the Atkinson Law Firm, ADKINSON, representing Buster Bickerstaff. I've been here before. On behalf of Mr. Bickerstaff for you. One, I want to start with addressing a simple concern of ours, and that is that obviously we got the developer's agreement late Thursday night. When we came before the planning board, we expressed a number of concerns to the planning board about what this land use would do to the related area. This parcel is part of the Seacrest plat. It is entitled, like every other lot of the Seacrest plat, to 1 unit and a mother-in-law cottage. Their position is it's a larger piece of property, and therefore it should get more because all the others are smaller. We don't agree with that, but we've said at the planning board that we did not want to see something that was inconsistent with the Seacrest neighborhood. And that's been our biggest argument this entire time, is that if everybody gets to come in on 30A and say, well, right down the road there's some condos, right next to me there's some condos, and over here there's some condos, sooner or later all those gorgeous Gulfront homes that make 30A different than Panama City and Destin are going to be gone, because we've let everybody get something like somebody else. We don't believe this developer's agreement is proposed, and I certainly hope you'll adopt the change Mr. Davis said he needs in there, because I believe that has to be in there. This agreement is virtually unenforceable, because they're going to sell it to somebody and get what they want out of this, which is to put more than 2 units. But we don't believe this developer's agreement as written actually encompasses what Mr. Lavin represented to this planning board. He said he wants to do a lot split. That's why he wants to go to this designation so he can do a lot split. He's not saying he's going to do a lot split. He's saying I'm going to limit it to 2 lots, and I'm going to get a house on each lot. They haven't said how those houses are going to be situated. We have concerns about that, but I'm going to bring up an even bigger concern we have today based on the facts that have occurred over the past 90 days. When we were before the planning board, there was an item in there that frankly was of very little concern to my client, and I'm sure to some of the other homeowners you hear from, and that was that the current land use this property has could not be used as a beach access. If they went to their new land use, it could be. But we were told by Mr. Lavin, all I want to do is build a house. I bought this to build a house. I decided I didn't want to build a 10,000 square foot house. This was his testimony to the planning board. Instead, I can get away with building 2 4,000 to 5,000 square foot houses. Okay? So I'll agree to limit it to whatever the planning board wants to let me get that. But I need my land use changed to do that, because under the current code, I can't get a lot split. I can't do it. Planning board approved it. It's been continued now for over 2 months because he's been trying to sell this piece of property to the TDC for the purpose of making it a beach access, which, oh, by the way, he could not have done under his current land use. So my concern, and the concern of Mr. Bickerstaff and other people in that area, is what we told the planning board our concern was for this person's proposal was that he's trying to get more than what he's telling you. He's representing one thing and he's doing the exact opposite.
You'll get in just a minute.
Well, Madam Chairman, this is quasi-judicial,
Right.
which means you do evidence. You can't just stand up and say things.
And I believe I've referenced the record in the planning board, Mr. Shipman.
Back it up, which is what he's doing. I'm sorry, but this is improper in a quasi-judicial proceeding.
Was there an objection for the record,
Yes,
Mr. Davis?
I'm objecting to it.
What's the objection?
You are up here, sitting here, just basically saying unsubstantiated facts. You're not giving testimony. You're not presenting evidence to this board. You have no way of knowing what the Lavins, whether they were.
I've cited what he said at the planning board.
Okay, if y'all will pause just a minute.
Okay,
Mark.
here's what I would suggest. You were sworn. Clint.
Yes.
This is public testimony. Your objection is to the relevance, and the commission can consider it for what it's worth.
And I will urge the board, if they are concerned that I have misrepresented any fact, to please get the absolute best record of this possible. It's a planning board meeting. It's a video. It's recorded. Mr. Lavin will tell you himself. He said right there what he was trying to do. We understand that he has agreed to limit this. We have very big concerns about the way this is come about. What we would like to see is a stronger developers agreement. Ultimately, we think a developers agreement needs to completely and fully foreclose the possibility that this property will ever be used for anything other than what is consistent with the Seacrest plat, which is a house and a mother-in-law cottage, not, as the prior commenter noted, 4 units that are subject to all be renting out and creating 4 units of density right there. We have very big concerns that the developer's agreement proposed by the developer and sent to the county does not adequately cover that. And frankly, we think the fact that they did turn around and try to sell it to the county might warrant the board's caution and remanding it to the planning board to consider, would that have been something the planning board would have approved? And I would respectfully submit to the board, the planning board approved what they recommended, which was this developer agreement would be for 2 houses. Yet this land use change is necessary to sell it to the county if it's going to become a beach access. So unfortunately, the problem is when we talk about how do these matters get presented to the public, when it went through the planning board and the public had a chance to speak, they were thinking it was going to be 2 houses, not a beach access. So people who were concerned about a beach access didn't get a chance to speak on that issue. Now here today, the county said we're not going to buy it this time around. That changes, and he's got his land use. One of the major hurdles to it becoming a beach access, which would absolutely affect the single-family property owners, and the condo to the opposite side is now gone, and the public won't have had a chance to see it. So while the left hand does one thing, the right hand gets to come back and do another. And respectfully, this developer's agreement, I do not believe would prohibit the county, if the county were to acquire this property, from turning it into a beach access. So those are our concerns. But at a bare minimum, yes, we highly recommend that if you're going to approve this, that it be absolutely conditioned on the limitation of density that is consistent with what was proposed. 2 lots, single-family dwelling on each one with nothing more than a mother-in-law suite. And I believe that language could have been in a developer's agreement that did not have to mirror the Walton County Code, which deals with accessory units and might have a greater purpose than a mother-in-law suite, as the Seacrest plat did. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And then I'll let you have a rebuttal, Mr. Shipman. Anyone else? Okay, Mr. Shipman, you may come up.
Okay, so let's talk about the inaccuracies of what just got put on the record. First of all, and I want to quote the developer's agreement that's in your packet. It says, limitations on intensity and density. Should the Walton County Commission approve the developer's request to amend the Walton County Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map designation on plus or minus 0.95 acres from residential preservation to low-density residential, the developer agrees to limit the density and intensity of the project to 2 lots with the ability to develop a single-family home with an accessory dwelling. Now, under your land planning code, any platted residential lot, you are entitled to build a single-family home with an accessory dwelling. This is not expanding it from 2 to 4. This makes it 2 lots, just like the lot next door. Second thing they said was, oh, well, this is inconsistent with the plan in the neighborhood. This is the only 1-acre lot in the area. Every other lot in this area is either half an acre or less. As I said when I first stood up here, to the immediate west, there's a series of approximately half-acre lots. Actually, these lots will be 2 feet wider than the next several lots down the road. And next door is a condominium that's 20 units that was developed at 12 units per acre. Across the street is a single-family home subdivision that is 7 units per acre. I must apologize, I couldn't even follow the argument about if the county bought a regional beach access. First of all, you decided you weren't going to do that. But if you had done it, it would have made no difference whether this particular amendment had been granted or not, because when the county, and we went over this the last meeting when y'all bought the property, Amalfi stretch, when the government buys a piece of land, the restrictions that are placed on the land, deed restrictions, no longer apply to the government. So it doesn't make any difference whether this lot split is there or not, as far as the government buying it. And y'all rejected this piece of property a while back anyway, so I don't even see the relevance. There is nothing about what is proposed here that is inconsistent with the Seacrest Beach plat. All it does is make this lot the same size as the next biggest lot in the plat. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. What's your pleasure?
Just a sec. Mr. Davis, do you see any problem with this development agreement?
No, sir. I think the first paragraph is fairly clear about what, it's clear about what it can.
Okay.
And by the way, the last paragraph, I'm probably being too particular. The last paragraph says it can't be assigned or given to another person, the terms of the agreement, without the county's approval. So even though we're going to add successors and assigns, we have 2 protections there. So I just want to make sure we're clear.
I'd just like to make a comment. I think this is kind of a dangerous precedent that we're setting, that we're changing. We're allowing more land use on 30A. I just want to remind everyone, we've got infrastructure, traffic, we have a lot of issues on 30A, and we're running out of properties. And that's why I think at some point you have to say, is it worth putting more houses on this on this road? So.
I understand your concerns, but I also remember, and I agree that if we would have bought this piece of property and made a regional beach access out of it, I feel like that would have put more traffic on 30A than two houses, 5,000 square foot houses or whatever. If I remember right, there were quite a number of parking places in that, and Jay's not here to tell us the number, but it was quite a few parking places, at least 40 or more, if I remember right. And I think that would have put more traffic on 38 than these two houses. I also remember that I was one of only two that voted against that, against buying that. So, I mean, I don't see how we can have it both ways. We can't say, okay, it's great for having a beach access because it's going to put a lot of traffic on there, but it's okay because it's a regional beach access. As opposed to saying, no, we can't do this because it's going to put too much traffic on 38. That just seems very conflicting to me, and that's the only comment I have about it.
Yeah, I believe it was the plan, if you'd done a regional beach access, the amount of parking was something like 3 times the maximum number of parking spaces you could create for two houses on these two lots. So it certainly would have increased the traffic. In addition, on a 1 acre lot, you could build, I guess, a 10,000 square foot house versus two 5,000 square foot houses and have the same amount of traffic when you start talking about if it was a short-term rental house, which, by the way, is largely what's in that area.
I understand Commissioner Nipper's concerns. I have many of the same concerns. I guess I have seen too many monster houses go in South Walton in my years of service on this board. And if it stays a single lot, then you could have a super giant sized house built there, which, during spring break, you're not gonna be able to stop the parking. I see more value in two smaller homes than one huge one. So that's my comment.
Which would also make this much more compatible with the neighborhood. Because there are no other lots that you could build the mega house on.
So do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we accept this.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign?
Nay.
So 4-1.
And the motion would include the changes to the development order that we made.
Right.
Okay,
That's
just to
correct.
make sure we're clear. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aliquot Animal Refuge relocation.
Yes, ma'am. It's not often that we have a project that we feel real good about. We try to stay as neutral as possible. But this is one that we really like. Staff has worked hard on this. The applicants worked very hard on this. Bob Arante, our senior planners, worked hard on this particular application, and I'm going to let him introduce this project.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a major development order application submitted by Dewberry Purple Rish on behalf of Lori Hood, requesting approval to develop a 106,211 square foot animal refuge center. This project is on 97.30 plus or minus acres with the future land use of a state residential and rural village. The applicant is here today to speak, and if you don't have any questions, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Do we have any questions for Bob?
No. Can we move the staff report into evidence?
I'm sorry, I was just going to do that. Can I get the staff report into record?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, yes, you may.
Thank you.
I didn't just shake my hand. Yes, you may. I know that's what they tell me in depositions too.
Good evening, Commissioners. Cliff Nauer, KNA UER, Dewberry Preble Rish. We think we have a awesome project before you today that will bring a lot of value to Walton County. Mrs. Lori Hood, as you're aware, started Aliqual Animal Refuge in her front yard, and it grew and grew and grew. And after a lot of growing, it started flooding because the whole place is in a flood zone. And so she's had a lot of challenges operating that facility essentially in her front yard. And so she's been searching for property for a long time. Mr. MC Davis donated a fairly large tract, and they've purchased some additional property. We have a total now of 97.3 acres. The project has been designed by my company and some fantastic architects that have all donated their time to try to make it happen. And so we think we came up with a great land plan and a great operational plan for what she expects to happen not only in the next 5 years, but in the next 20 or 30 years with the property. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of walk through what it is that we're proposing to do briefly. I see your look, Mr. Chairman. I will make it very brief.
No, he's not. He's vice chair.
I'm vice chair. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sometimes we think
I apologize. I apologize.
No problem.
He was giving me the chairman stare.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he does that. He helps me.
So as you come into the welcome center, we've got into the entrance we have a welcome center that's designed like a large barn that will have a showcase the facility and explain to guests what everything is on the property and where they should go depending on what they want to do. And so if they want to adopt a dog or a cat, it'll give them instruction on where they want to go. If they're a medical intern of some sort, it'll show them where to report to for the medical facilities that are going to have internships and so forth. We have some dog adoption buildings back here that will have quite a few kennels. It'll be a home-like environment for the dogs. It will allow guests to have access to them and will also give the dogs plenty of room for exercise. It won't be little pens. It'll be a lot different than what a lot of facilities have. There's going to be something we're calling the medical super shed. The medical super shed is a giant covered building with smaller buildings underneath it, and so the whole thing will be under one roof, but there'll be individual medical offices inside this building. They're going to offer a wide range of medical work for all sorts of different kind of animals, not just cats and dogs, but wildlife, that kind of thing as well. They're also going to have a pretty significant staff and a lot of volunteers and a lot of internship training and a lot of research that they expect to do at the facility. There's going to be a small refreshment trailer for people to get a drink of some sort while they're out there. There's going to be a horse arena, which is this whole area right here. And the horses, basically, it'll be free range. The only time they'll come into any type of covered area of any sort will be just to feed. And once they get fed, they go back out into the pasture. There won't be stalls, for example. There will be a medical clinic with some surgery rooms, some labs, and quiet spaces for animals that are under rehabilitation. A chapel for people whose dogs or animals have died that want to have a service. There'll be no public worship there. And then a few small cabins for interns that are training at the facility. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. We've got 3 stormwater facilities. We meet everything in the land development code that's required. We also meet all of the parking requirements. The only thing that we did ask the planning director for any type of, not necessarily a variance, but the planning director can allow for some grass parking. And so we've got 144 paved parking spaces, but we have 16 grass parking spaces. We feel like with the size of our site that 16 spaces in the grass is not a big deal. The planning director approved that request, which he's allowed to do. And so we meet all the land development code requirements. We meet all the 25-year pre-post storm requirements, and it's really going to be a first-class facility. And so Ms. Lori's here today to speak, and she can talk to you guys for hours about it, and she knows a lot more about it than I do. But we're proud of the project, and we think that it'll bring a lot of value to Walton County. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions, and then would like to give Ms. Lori just a minute to speak to you as well.
Do we have any questions?
I got a comment. Ms. Lori, for you, if Cliff designs anything, when a 6x6 will work, he'll come in with a 12x12. So watch your call sheet there.
I'd just like to make a comment, and this is to Lori. When she started out, I was actually her mailman at the time, and she literally started in her front yard. And it is in a floodplain zone, and it doesn't take a lot of rain for her front yard to flood. So to see what she's done from that beginnings to now is just absolutely amazing, and I applaud her for her efforts in doing that.
Absolutely, and I wish Mr. MC was here to witness this, because it's a great thing, so thank you. Now, if you'd brought a dog tonight, we would have been more, you know. Thank you. Would you like to say something?
Sure.
I just wanted to say thank you, number one, for your time tonight, and I'm certainly not going to take up very much of it. But just wow, after 2 years of planning all of this, I can't believe I'm finally standing here tonight, so I'm really excited, so thank you. When I created Aliqua about 10 years ago, I did it to address the lack of an animal shelter in Walton County. We had no shelter in our county at all. I had no idea it was going to turn into what it's turned into today, and that I'd be standing in front of you tonight, but that's exactly what happened. The refuge has directly adopted over 15,000 animals since that day, the majority of them having been detoured from the Walton County facility, so I feel like we've taken a lot off the county for that. We've worked side by side with the sheriff of Walton County in many cruelty cases and have done a lot of animal cruelty training because of those cases. And because of that, it directly has impacted the amount of animal cruelty prosecutions we've had in our county, so we're really proud about that too. Aliqua has programs that's directly helped our citizens, such as our equine interactions programs. We bring in handicapped individuals to work with our horses, and it completely changes their lives. And we do that in a therapeutic setting, so we're going to do that on the new property as well. That's what the horse arena is actually for, a private place that these people can have one-on-one training. And now we're going to expand that into abused children who have to have a private place to do this type of therapeutic work. We have an unconditional love program, which we use the Walton County Work Camp to train our dogs. And it's a program in itself that's just amazing. It changes the lives of the inmates at the program, and it changes the lives of the dogs afterwards. So we're proud to partner with the county for that as well. We also have educational programs which introduce our youth to feel empathy for animals, so that's going to be extended as well onto our new property. And as Cliff said, after having a couple of literally Noah Ark adventures, when we had a couple of hurricane scares that came, we had to evacuate 250 animals on that property, and it was something else. So after a long time waiting, we finally have the property to move to expand, and we will never have to do a Noah's Ark again. Our future home is going to be one that the county will be proud of. It's going to be highly focused on education from our youth all the way to future veterinarians and people we're going to visit across the country. We've already partnered with the University of Florida and Auburn University to send their interns to work with our center, and I think it's going to make a huge difference in the future of animal sheltering and animal sanctuaries. So that's all I wanted to say. Your continued support this evening and your support for this evening would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for today. And I'm open for questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions? No. How about questions from the audience, concerns? Just wonderful job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I don't come because I'll take 5 animals if I
I had Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign.
Thank you, Commissioners. The next item on our agenda is number 3, the Stonegate subdivision. This project was reviewed by Tim Brown, and I'll let him introduce that.
Good evening, Tim Brown with Planning and Development. This is a major development order application submitted by Jenkins Engineering on behalf of D.R. Horton, requesting approval for the development of 69 single-family lots on 19.63 acres with the future land use of low-density residential. It's located on the west side of West Hewitt Road, north of Walmart. This property received a land use change from conservation residential 2-to-1 to low-density residential on August 25th, 2015. They have a proportionate fair share contribution of $118,290. And unless other evidence is presented to the contrary, the requested project is consistent with the Walton County Comprehensive Plan and Land Development Code. I would request that the staff report be entered into evidence, and I'll take any questions the board may have.
Yes.
Thank you.
Tim, I'm looking at the staff report, item number 4 on page 6 of 9. Has that been completed as far as this historical archaeological sites? Have they been addressed?
I do not believe so, Commissioner, but we're making that a condition of the approval.
Okay. Well, I can ask the applicant where they are in the process.
And I believe it'll be up to the State Division of Historic Resources whether it's actually required or not.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jamie Eubanks, EUBANKS, and I have been sworn in. I don't know if I'll get a round of applause afterwards or not, but we think it's a good project. I'll start just by answering your question real quick, Mr. Chapman. This has gone to ERP. We are in the final stages of their approval. This site was actually clear cut numerous times over the years, with the exception of, you'll notice a natural vegetative buffer in the front. I don't anticipate any issues. None of the environmental assessments have come back to show that there would be any concerns. So, with that in mind, I'll just hit the high points real quick. I don't want to hold anybody up. Like I said, we do think it's a nice project. One of the unique things about the project, actually directly to the north, west, and south on 3 sides, is actually surrounded by state land. It's actually forest. It's actually conservation under your land use. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's actually a 70-foot natural buffer that currently exists on this site. You can see on the aerial in front of you up there that the site's pretty well been clear cut, but they did leave some land in the front. Developer's going to maintain that. So one of the nice things about this property, in addition to the required plantings, it's essentially buffered on 4 sides, to and from the neighborhood. So it should be nice for the residents as well as those around. And then real quickly, we worked pretty hard with the Mosquito Control District on this site. The district, we're actually giving them a 50-foot easement that goes through, runs in conjunction with the ditch. They don't have one now. This way, if they need to make repairs or improvements later, they can. And then one thing they did ask us to consider, ask the developer to consider, was would they do a clear span or a bridge span across that ditch rather than your standard culvert crossing and pipe. The developer looked at it, agreed to it. So the ditch itself actually will have no impacts. Everything will span the ditch. And then just lastly, real quick, instead of the 25-year storm for this, they actually do provide treatment for the 100-year storm event. So with that said, it's 3.5 units per acre. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions? Okay, questions from the audience, comments from the audience? Seeing none.
Well, I'll go ahead and step out there. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve based on staff's conditions of approval.
Have a motion?
Second.
Have a second? Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. If you had a few dogs running around, we'd clap.
It'd be great if we could have applause after everything got approved.
We should.
Thank you, Commissioners. This moves us to item number 4 on our agenda, Sunrise Beach 2. This is a replat of 2 existing lots to move a common lot line slightly north. We're not increasing density, we're just moving the common lot line between Lot 1 and Lot 40 slightly north from its present position.
Any questions for Mr. Carpenter? Any comments, questions from the audience? Seeing none?
Mac, can you explain, was it a problem with the original platted subdivision?
Yes,
Okay.
the 2 lots.
I couldn't catch it on my
The 2 lots in question are the ones down here at the bottom.
Right.
And you can see the common lot line that extends from that little notch.
Right.
In the street there, has been moved.
Okay.
Is that it? Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
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 And we certainly wish you the very best, Mr. Davis.
Yes, Mark.
Yes.
Thank y'all.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much.
Mark, excuse me, I meant to say that in the record. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your friendship over the years. And I have known Mark Davis since the day he was born, literally. His dad was my basketball coach. So I was at his house when he came home from the hospital.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Thank you very
And I
much.
suppose we'll see you on that side of the table.
No, I hope not.
Hope not. Me too. All right.
Thank you
Motion to
all. Thank you
adjourn?
very much.
So moved.
A motion. And a second, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth.